The dragon was mystified and almost fainted in shock. It unleashed its claws and flew toward the mussels at its fastest speed. "Return my purple cloud mushrooms." In response, the mussel shut its shell and rolled towards Gushijio. "Save me, master." Gushijio teleported towards the mussel and utilized her long and sturdy whip to block the momentum of the dragon. She started to fight with it again. Since the purple cloud mushroom had been collected, Gushijio was more energetic now. The fight with the dragon naturally grew more intense. Lu Wu and the mussel stayed out of the action. But Lu Wu did ask the mussel, "Are there at least 100 mushrooms inside your shell?" The mussel responded proudly, "It was Master who sent me a directed audio message to ask me to collect the mushrooms. However, she asked me only to pick a few. In the end, I collected every single one. Look, they are all inside my shell." Lu Wu was speechless. It breathed a sigh of relief. Master can now refine as many medicines as she wants. The dragon had excellent hearing. Even though it was midway battling with Gushijio, it could hear the conversation between the two beasts. Its heart was filled with rage at this point. There were many a time when it wanted to forget about Gushijio and shred the mussel into pieces instead. Luckily for the mussel, Gushijio always had a plan. "Two of you should go to the place where we entered and wait for me. I will arrive later." The mussel was worried. "Master, are you able to deal with this beast on your own?" Of course. Gushijio made it seem so easy. Lu Wu was quite intelligent and knew Gu Zijia's real intention was not to flaunt. "Mussel, we will distract Master if we stay here. Let's go." It looked at Gushijio again. Master is too strong for this opponent. The mussel was relieved. "All right, Master. We will wait for you there." The two beasts left and headed all the way to the entrance. The further they went, the more furious the dragon became. Gu Zijia's current skills were definitely worse than during her prime. However, she had a lot more experiences to bring to her benefit. Moreover, since the mussel and Lu Wu had left, she had no concern anymore, so she could fight without pressure. Furthermore, the dragon was in a state of anger. Although it was more violent than before, there were more weaknesses to exploit. Every time it got distracted by the mussel, Gushijio knew that she could strike it down. An hour later, the mussel and Lu Wu arrived at their point of entry. Before they could stand firmly, there was a blue shadow that flashed from afar. It was Gushijio. The mussel and Lu Wu were relieved and rushed forward to her. "Master, have you gotten rid of the stupid dragon? Or do we need to rush out before it chases after us?" It did not manage to finish its sentence, because Gushijio took out a red alchemy tool. Lu Wu's eyes widened. "Master, have you killed the dragon?" Gushijio nodded. "Of course." The mussel seemed to doubt her statement. Since when had its master become so powerful? It gave Gushijio a thumbs up. "Master, you are too strong. Master, you must be exhausted. You should rest first before you open the enchanted barrier. It is still early, it has not been 6 days yet." Di Fui had taught Gushijio the way to open the enchanted barrier. It was indeed quite exhausting. They had come in for almost 5 days, and this trip was undoubtedly full of rewards. So what was the rush? Gushijio shook her head. She did not rest and directly performed the technique to open the entrance of the enchanted barrier. "Di Fui, I am coming back with the herb. You must wait for me. Don't leave me in despair." A few minutes later, a colorful rainbow door appeared in the air. Gushijio dragged the two beasts. "Let's go." As Gushijio was rushing out of the rainbow gate, she almost fell once they exited. She was really too tired. For nearly 5 days, she barely had a rest. Before she came back, she fought with the giant dragon that made her even more exhausted. She could barely stand properly, and cold sweat was dripping from her forehead. It was clear that she did not care about anything right now except Di Fui. She quickly surveyed the area and realized that everything was still the same. The mountains, the rock, the flowers. Everything had remained the same, and there was no white cloth present. She immediately calmed herself down. Di Fui was the master here. If he had already immortalized, there must be white cloth hanging around the palace. Therefore he was still alive. Since the time that she returned was close to midnight, the garden was tranquil, and the 4 messengers were not around. Gu Shijio did not even have the power to teleport anymore. She sat down on a stone and used her directed audio spell to contact Di Fui. She had collected the medicine for him. He could be saved. She wanted him to come and pick her up. She was exhausted, and she also missed his hugs. She wanted to tell him how tired she was to make him feel bad. Unfortunately, the device did not seem to be working. What had happened? Did the Di Fui switch off the spell again? Where did he go this time? Why would he even take such a risk? It could not be. Gu Shijio had dialed 7 to 8 times in a row. However, there was no response on the other side. Maybe he was asleep? Or perhaps he accidentally switched it off. She could not help herself and was not in the mood to second guess. She made up her mind and directly teleported into Di Fui's bedroom. Because of her extreme fatigue, she only managed to teleport outside the bedroom, even though she intended to land on the bed. Anyway, just as she was about to go in, she inadvertently looked up to see Di Fui's plaque. She was stunned. When Gu Shijio came here in the past, she was so impressed by the 3 words that graced this palace and spent hours studying the writing and meaning. But now the 3 words were gone. There was an empty plaque hanging there. Gu Shijio recalled that the background of the plate was light gold, and the words were purple, but now it was plain light gold, and it seemed like no one had even written a word on it. What? What had happened? Why did Di Fui erase the words from the plaque? Gu Shijio was getting panicked, but she tried to suppress her concerns. She took a deep breath and went straight into the palace. She was speechless. The palace was still the same palace, but the things inside had a very drastic change. The flowers and birds on the windows had disappeared. The light green plum-shaped bedsheet had also become a plain bedsheet. The plum drawing on it had disappeared. Di Fui liked to draw and had designed plenty of the items in his residence. However, all his masterpieces had become blank canvases. Gu Zijia's brain went blank. Her face was pale at this point. What happened here? Is this some sort of prank? Di Fui? Where was Di Fui? Gu Shijio looked at the bed. Her bedsheet was still there, but Di Fui's had disappeared. In other words, everything that belonged to Di Fui had disappeared. It was as if he never even existed. What was going on? Was this a nightmare? Gu Shijio subconsciously pinched her thigh, and it hurt. She was not dreaming. In a panicked state, she rushed out and fell at the entrance. A man appeared from out of nowhere. When the person saw Gu Shijio sitting on the ground, he sighed and immediately bowed. "My lord, you are finally here." Gu Zijia's knees were painful, and she also hurt her palm. She suddenly looked up and saw Mu Feng standing in front of her. "You. What did you call me?" "My lord. What happened to you?" "Oh no. You are injured." Mu Feng stepped forward and held a tube of ointment to treat her injuries. Gu Shijio remained silent. She stared at Mu Feng and suspected that he was being impersonated. However, she could not see any noticeable differences. "Mu Feng, as your lord, I want to know where is Di Fui. Answer me." Mu Feng looked blankly at Gu Shijio. "Di Fui? Who is Di Fui?" Gu Shijio was losing her mind. "Mu Feng, listen to me. I am in no mood to joke with you. Where is he? What is he playing again? Please help me to tell him that if he lies to me again, I will hate him forever." Mu Feng looked confused and scratched his scalp. "My lord, how do I dare to make fun of you? I have really never heard of this person." Gu Shijio was furious. "Mu Feng, what are you playing? He is your master and the real lord. Please don't make such a low-class joke with me. This is not funny." Her voice was sharp, and the aura around her was intense. Mu Feng shuddered and quickly kneeled. "My lord, were you poisoned in the Forbidden Land? You have been our master all the time. Who the hell is Di Fui? How can he be the real lord?" He looked worried and took out a spray from his sleeve. "My lord, this is the solution to remove any spells or illusions. Can I spray it on you?" Gu Shijio was speechless. She involuntarily took a few steps back. Her hands and feet were suddenly freezing. Mu Feng seemed to be speaking the truth. It looked like he had never heard of Di Fui. He seemed to have forgotten entirely about Di Fui. She seemed to think of something in her heart, but just refused to admit it. She did not want to face it. In disbelief, she took out a stack of papers from her storage bag. This stack of papers contained information that Di Fui had written over the past few days. At the time, Gu Shizhou did not want him to write, so she grabbed the stack of papers from him and put them in her storage bag. Now, she took them out and wanted to use them to prove Di Fui's existence. This is what he wrote a few days ago. It is confidential information only known by the Lord. As she spoke, she looked at the papers and suddenly went silent. Initially, the papers were filled with Di Fui's handwriting, but now they had become blank pieces of paper. Gu Shizhou checked every single piece of paper as she could not believe it. Regrettably, the more she looked, the worse she felt. They were all blank papers. In fairness, there was a paper with a few words. However, it was not his writing but her graffiti. Mu Feng quickly stepped forward and said worriedly as he saw the sweat that covered Gu Zijia's forehead. "My lord, you should take a break. Perhaps, you have stayed in the Forbidden Land for too long. You are probably suffering from an illusion." Gu Shijia was perplexed. She could not believe that a living being could just disappear without leaving anything behind. Most importantly, it was Di Fui's most loyal subordinate who claimed that she had an illusion. What was Di Fui trying to do? Di Fui. Di Fui. This name flashed across her mind desperately. How could she forget about it? How could people forget about him? He was such a magnanimous person. Gu Shizhou then realized that she was probably in her biggest nightmare right now. The worst part was that there was no waking up. Suddenly she grabbed Mu Feng's collar. "Follow me." Not waiting for Mu Feng to speak a single word, she teleported to Di Fui's study room. There were countless of scrolls written by Di Fui there, and they were all the only copies in the world. Those were the Lord's spells and strategies which Di Fui wanted to pass to her. Hence, it was almost impossible that Di Fui would destroy it. Gu Shizhou had paid several visits to Di Fui's study room lately as he often taught her a lot in there. She used to just sit on his lap and crash into his embrace to sniff his odor while listening to him talking about the spells. At this moment, the chair he used to sit on was still there, and there were even a few scrolls on his desk with text on it. Gu Shizhou rushed forward and retrieved one of the scrolls. Although she had a blurred vision at the time, she rapidly flipped through the manuscript and noticed there were many words on it. "Mu Feng, look. This is written by him. These are written by him." She tried to be calm, but her voice was clearly trembling. Mu Feng was stunned as he took a look at the scroll in her hand. "My lord, these scrolls are done by me. Weren't you the one who gave me the instruction to copy them?" "What?" The scroll in Gu Zijia's hands almost dropped on the floor. She took a deep breath and rubbed her eyes. However, she realized the handwriting did not belong Di Fui. It was Mu Feng's. She refused to believe in it but took a few other scrolls. As a result, she found out all the handwriting belonged to the 4 messengers. None was written by Di Fui. She wavered and slumped on Di Fui's chair. What was going on? Was she losing her mind? Her limbs were numb, and her head was blank as if she had fallen into hell. She wanted to break out of this place, but unfortunately, the hands which used to pull her up would never appear again. Di Fui. Di Fui. He had left her. The dream was real. He had immortalized. But he was not due yet. It should be 6 days later. Why would it happen so much earlier? She worked so hard to collect the herbs, but it was useless now. How could it be like this? Was it one of Di Fui's plans? Was he afraid that she would be very sad during the last few days? So he hid himself to prevent her from facing his immortalization? With one last crazy attempt, her gaze stopped at Mu Feng again. She was furious. Is he hiding? You tell him, I've got the purple cloud mushroom for him. Please ask him to come out. Come out. Mu Feng remained silent. Hence, Gu Shizhou no longer continued talking with him. She teleported out from the room. At the top of her lungs she screamed, Di Fui, come out. I really got the herbs. You're fine now, stop fooling around, come out. Come out, please. Gu Shizhou had used her spiritual power to amplify her voice. Hence, the entire Biwu Palace could hear her. As long as Di Fui was still in the Biwu Palace, he could definitely hear it no matter where he was. She waited for 15 minutes after her bold attempt. However, he did not appear. She stood there idly. Her dress was fluttering as the wind blew. The wind was warm, but she felt as if it was icy cold. Di Fui did not come, but the muscle and Luwu have arrived. Master. Gu Zijia's eyes sparkled when she saw them as if she found hope. Muscle, open your shell. Where's my purple cloud mushroom? The muscle quickly opened its shell and showed her the mushrooms. Here. Gu Shijio heaved a sigh of relief. Muscle, you should know who I need to give these mushrooms to, right? She was certain that Muscle knew those mushrooms were to save Di Fui. Hence, both the Muscle and Luwu should know who she was talking about. The Muscle was idled for a moment and responded. Master, are planning to make medicine with the mushrooms? Out of her eagerness, she quickly asked, who are you trying to save? To save? The Muscle and Luwu looked at each other. It was said that this medicine could prolong one's life and prevent aging, but we never knew that you wanted to save anyone. Gu Zijia's heart sank. Muscle, don't you tell me you have forgotten about Di Fui as well. The Muscle and Luwu looked at each other again, and shook their head. The Muscle carefully asked, Master, who is Di Fui? That was enough to throw her off. It was as if she stepped on an empty space while walking on a cliff. Upon that realization, she opted to be alone. Master. My lord. Mu Feng and the Muscle was calling Gu Shijio. However, she did not turn back but ran toward the stargazing chamber. Di Fui, please, don't scare me. Although I look strong, I can't take this right now. I'm scared. I'm really scared. She slowed down when she arrived at the doorstep of the stargazing chamber. Gu Shijio did not dare to enter. She would know the truth once she enters, but was she able to handle it? Gu Shijio inched forward step by step as if her legs were tied to a heavy weight. She was not usually someone who liked to avoid things, as she used to face every problem bravely. However, she was scared now. She remained stationary for 3 to 4 minutes as she looked at the staircase. She did not have the courage to walk up the stairs. Di Fui had been walking up and down the staircase with her these days. He held her hand every single time. However, no one would do the same anymore. Gu Shijio had to face her fears alone this time. A moment later, she finally made up her mind and rushed in. She saw the starry sky and then slowly sat on the floor. The sky was covered by countless stars. No one would ever notice which star has been missing if they were not an expert. It was still the same starry sky. However, the big star she cared for the most was missing. Initially, there were 2 very bright 7-colored stars shining in the sky. However, only one was left. The one that represented Di Fui was gone. It had fallen. It had indeed fallen. Gu Shijio slumped to the floor, and she would not get up. Everything did not make sense anymore. The chilliness started to creep into her bones while her body was getting numb. It seemed that this was all not a joke, and that she had indeed returned late, just like in her dream. She got the herbs, but God did not want to allow her to save his life. Her mind was blank, and she could not get a lot of information at the moment. The only phrase lingering in her mind was, he is dead. He is really dead. She couldn't see him anymore. The last time they saw each other was the moment before she entered the Buddha Fire Land. She could not believe that quick hug and kiss was their farewell. She had no idea how long she had been sitting there. It was as if there was no point for her even to get up. Mu Feng was visibly worried. He asked, My lord? My lord? Are you all right? However, Gu Shijio just continued to look into the starry sky without acknowledging him. In the end, Mu Feng decided to break in as he was indeed worried. He noticed Gu Shijio looked very pale as she was looking at the stars. She did not move at all. My lord? Why don't you go back and rest? He thought the lord must be exhausted. A moment later, Gu Shijio slowly shifted her gaze to his face. Mu Feng, have you really forgotten about him? He was once your master, the lord you were always loyal to. You've been following his lead for a few hundred years. His name is Di Fui or Huang Tu. Her voice was hoarse, and her eyes were red but tearless. I have no idea what's happening, but he has been so nice to all of you. How could you forget about him? He has done so much for the world. How could he have vanished like this? Mu Feng frowned as he could feel the pain Gu Shizhou resonated when she mentioned the two names. Sadly, he could not recall anything. Gu Shizhou did not bother him anymore. She finally got up, but she could not stand properly. Although the floor was flat, she walked as if she was on a bumpy road. She then proceeded to wander every single corner in the Biwu Palace. Unfortunately, still did not manage to find a single thing about Difui. Everything related to Difui was gone, including the words he engraved. It felt like this person had never belonged to the Biwu Palace. It seemed like Difui was just a person she imagined in her dream, but never existed in reality. Even the muscle and Luwu had forgotten about him. She was the only one who remembered this person. Gu Shizhou wondered if Difui was worried that she would be too depressed. Hence, he decided to cast a spell on the Biwu Palace to vanish everything before he immortalized. Perhaps he wanted to remove her memories too, but she was immune to it. If he only cast a spell on the Biwu Palace, then perhaps people on the outside would still remember him. With a faint sense of hope, she instantly rushed out of the palace. Unfortunately, Gu Shizhou soon realized that everything about Difui had vanished from this world. Gu Shizhou obsessively checked around the towns and spoke to numerous people of different classes. Sadly, no one remembered Difui. While she was asking about Difui, she heard about the news of a meteor shower a day ago. For different colored rays stopped the meteors in midair and burnt them into ashes before it fell on the continent. While after the meteor shower, the overlord of the Jiuxing clan, Qian Yueran, the overlord of the Yinyang clan, Hua Wuyan, Celestial Master Yu, Tian Jiyue, and even Lan Jingyi from the Mermaid Kingdom disappeared altogether. Gu Shizhou slumped to the floor, and she would not get up. Everything did not make sense anymore. The chilliness started to creep into her bones while her body was getting numb. It seemed that this was all not a joke, and that she had indeed returned late just like in her dream. She got the herbs, but God did not want to allow her to save his life. Her mind was blank, and she could not get a lot of information at the moment. The only phrase lingering in her mind was, "He is dead. He is really dead." She couldn't see him anymore. The last time they saw each other was the moment before she entered the Buddha Fire Land. She could not believe that quick hug and kiss was their farewell. She had no idea how long she had been sitting there. It was as if there was no point for her even to get up. Mu Feng was visibly worried. He asked, "My lord? My lord? Are you all right?" However, Gu Shizhou just continued to look into the starry sky without acknowledging him. In the end, Mu Feng decided to break in as he was indeed worried. He noticed Gu Shizhou looked very pale as she was looking at the stars. She did not move at all. "My lord, why don't you go back and rest?" He thought the lord must be exhausted. A moment later, Gu Shizhou slowly shifted her gaze to his face. "Mu Feng, have you really forgotten about him? He was once your master, the lord you were always loyal to. You've been following his lead for a few hundred years. His name is Difui or Huangtu." Her voice was hoarse, and her eyes were red but tearless. "I have no idea what's happening, but he has been so nice to all of you. How could you forget about him? He has done so much for the world. How could he have vanished like this?" Mu Feng frowned as he could feel the pain Gu Shizhou resonated when she mentioned the two names. Sadly, he could not recall anything. Gu Shizhou did not bother him anymore. She finally got up, but she could not stand properly. Although the floor was flat, she walked as if she was on a bumpy road. She then proceeded to wander every single corner in the Biwu Palace. Unfortunately, still did not manage to find a single thing about Difui. Everything related to Difui was gone, including the words he engraved. It felt like this person had never belonged to the Biwu Palace. It seemed like Difui was just a person she imagined in her dream, but never existed in reality. Even the muscle and Luwu had forgotten about him. She was the only one who remembered this person. Gu Shizhou wondered if Difui was worried that she would be too depressed. Hence, he decided to cast a spell on the Biwu Palace to vanish everything before he immortalized. Perhaps he wanted to remove her memories too, but she was immune to it. If he only cast a spell on the Biwu Palace, then perhaps people on the outside would still remember him. With a faint sense of hope, she instantly rushed out of the palace. Unfortunately, Gu Shizhou soon realized that everything about Difui had vanished from this world. Gu Shijiu obsessively checked around the towns and spoke to numerous people of different classes. Sadly, no one remembered Difui. While she was asking about Difui, she heard about the news of a meteor shower a day ago. For different colored rays stopped the meteors in midair and burnt them into ashes before it fell on the continent. While after the meteor shower, the overlord of the Jiuxing clan, Qianyueran, the overlord of the Yinyang clan, Hua Wuyan, Celestial Master Yu, Tianjiyue, and even Lan Jingyi from the Mermaid Kingdom disappeared altogether. Rumor has it that they received instruction from the Lord to stop the meteor shower with all their skills and energy. Thus, they managed to stop a disaster, but they also burnt the last drop of their power and disappeared from this world. The Lord was still as mysterious as usual in their eyes, as no one knew his or her name, and no one knew that there was a new Lord. Gu Shijiu also went to the Celestial Master's residence. However, no one was staying in the residence now. Initially, they had moved to the Biwu Palace, but now they were not there either. Meanwhile, everything about Difui had vanished as well. There was not even a footprint left in there. Gu Shijiu wandered around like a wild soul and left with disappointment. She felt extremely disappointed and miserable, especially because she had no one to talk to. Everyone had forgotten about Difui except her. In her heart, she really wanted to find a mutual friend to talk about him, just to prove that he existed before. It would at least help to fill the enormous pit in her heart. Unfortunately, no one remembered him. She thought she should catch up with Long Sai to at least clear her doubts. Long Sai was very happy when he saw her, but he was confused when she mentioned about Difui. Apparently, he could not remember him either. Obviously, the world had forgotten about Difui. Such a great person had just disappeared, to the extent that no one could even remember his name. Gu Shijiu did not stay long in the Tianwen clan. She left very quickly even though Long Sai asked her to stay a while longer. Understandably, Gu Shijiu was frustrated. She wanted to find anything related to Difui, even if it was just a phrase or a word. However, nothing was found. She wandered around the continent with disappointment for half a day and finally recalled a place. The Crystal Palace in the deep sea. As the palace was deep in the sea, perhaps there was something left in there. It was an easy task for her to dive into the deep sea based on her current level of kung fu. Gu Shijiu returned to the Crystal Palace in a brief period. The Crystal Palace was still standing majestically, just like a beautiful dream which carried Gu Zijius little hope. That was the most sacred home Difui, and Gu Shijiu shared. He prepared her bridal chamber in there. They cuddled and made love in there, and he walked every single corner together with her while holding her hand. The palace was still there, and it still looked as spectacular as before. However, all the poems engraved by Difui had disappeared. Even the words she carved on the corals, trees, and rails had partially disappeared. Whichever word that was related to his name was now an empty space. Gu Shijiu had engraved both of their names on a coral before with an arrow that poked through a heart. It was the arrow from a cupid. However, everything was left there now except the name she was looking for. She did not give up and continued to wander around. However, she got more disappointed the more she looked. Difui. Difui. The heavenly law was unfair. How could he have vanished this way without even a name left in this world? She slowly walked to the garden and saw the two rocking chairs. Suddenly, she had a blur vision as if she saw Difui sitting on the rocking chair and smiling to her. He even opened his arms and she heard a voice. "Baby, come to me." She began to tear as she looked at him. "Difui, you're here." She rushed forward as she wanted to hug him. She wanted to crash into his embrace to feel his warmth, to feel his presence. Sadly, she crashed into the rocking chair. Difui was gone. All she could feel was the backrest of the rocking chair. The backrest of the chair was as cold as her heart. She slowly sat on the rocking chair which Difui used to sit in, and began to hug the backrest as if she was searching for his odor. It was a certainty that she would encounter another disappointment. Difui was once a lively and compelling person, but nothing about him was left in the world when he immortalized. She was the only one who remembered him, and to make matters worse, she could never see him again. She lied down and looked at the starry sky. fixing her gaze on the biggest star. Slowly, her vision got blurry, and she realized it was tear forming on her eye when she rubbed it. Coldly, she looked at her hand. She covered her eyes, but the tears still penetrated the gaps between her fingers. Being arrogant and independent, Gu Shijie was used to sobbing quietly when she had to cry. The tears were overflowing this time, just like the disappointment in her heart. After several days of anxiety and disappointment, she finally collapsed. She could not hold her emotions together anymore in this empty palace. She let go and cried. Difui, I hate you. Difui, you come out and see me. Difui, I'm hurt. Look, the dragon bit my arm. It's painful. You must come out and take a look. She rolled up her sleeve and exposed the flesh on her arm. However, the one who used to care about her would not appear anymore. Regardless of whether she was injured or dying, the one she wanted to see would never show up again. There were a million stars in the sky tonight, but the one she wanted to see was not there anymore. Gu Shijie consumed all of her energy crying her tears out, and her voice even caused the palace to tremor lightly. The plants swayed and even teared as she cried. The wind blew in the palace, and her dress was fluttering. She felt even more lonely now. She had no idea how long she had been crying. She only knew that she began to feel dizzy and had a headache. She realized her voice was hoarse when she finally stopped crying. Then, she looked at the sky again. The shadow of Difui was swaying in the sky and slowly disappeared. Suddenly, a terrifying thought occurred to her. It seemed that her memories of Difui were getting clouded. Initially, it was very clear, but she realized something was wrong in her mind, as if something was trying to rub away her memories of Difui. Immediately, she felt a cold sensation on her limbs. Would she forget about him? No way. She did not want the world to forget about him. She did not want to forget about him either. If she forgets about him, then he would be completely gone. Difui had done so much for her. He had done so much for her world. How could he disappear this way? She wanted to keep his memories. She struggled to get up and pulled out a short knife. She ran toward a huge rock and began to carve his name, Difui. This name was both pleasing and torturing to her. Every single stroke on the rock felt like strokes on her heart. Surprisingly, the three characters immediately disappeared once she finished carving them, as if there was an invisible hand always ready to wipe his name off. How could it be? Not even his name. What evil things had he done that the heavenly order had to treat him this way? Gu Shijie was extremely mad, so she continued to carve his name again. Difui Huang Tuesday. These two names had already left a mark on her soul. It was wiped off every single time she was done carving them. She used her spiritual power to carve his name, and even bit her fingertips and used her blood to write it. It did not work. These two names seemed to have become taboo in this world. No matter what strategy she used, she would watch disappointedly as the names disappeared. Difui, how can I keep your memories? What should I do to keep something about you in this world? She idled in front of the huge rock and suddenly had an idea. She quickly used the knife and carved a poem. One has gone after he has done his part without leaving any footprint as proof. She held her breath and waited for a while after she was done carving the poem. It was still there. The poem did not disappear. Awesome. She would just continue to carve this poem. She was slightly more energetic now, and began to carve the poem everywhere in the palace. For hours later, the entire crystal palace was covered by this poem. She even made the two characters Fu and Yi more prominent than the rest. In the end, she looked at the poem as she sat on the rocking chair. One has gone after he has done his part without leaving any footprint as proof. She seemed to have been inspired. Difui, did you get this nickname for what would happen today? She lifted her chin and laughed. Difui, you already knew you would have this ending, didn't you? It's so cool that you've left. But you left me alone in this world. Difui, I hate you. I hate you. If there is an afterlife, I'd rather not know you. She teared as she laughed, looking at the big seven-colored star in the sky as she sat on the rocking chair alone. No one in this world would look at the stars with her anymore. No one would ever hug her in his embrace when she fell asleep. She sang softly. Karma is the reason for obsession. Sadness will turn into someone's taboo. And you could never hold it when time slipped away. The promises we made 10 years ago disappeared as the 4 seasons repeated every year. She was exhausted. The saddest thing was she got nothing in return even though she has gone through so many hassles. Finally, she fell asleep. The firmament stone on her wrist, who pretended to be dead, finally shone. Master, Difui did not know everything about the world. He certainly did not know that he would vanish after he immortalized. Master, this is the deal between Difui and the Heavenly Order. He willingly to take all the punishments because he wanted to resurrect you earlier and prevent you from being punished. The Heavenly Order would not punish you, but everything about Difui will be vanished, including all his credits. Everyone wants to leave something in this world, even if it was a bad mark. It was good as long as people remember them. Sadly, he couldn't leave anything here. Master, you shouldn't hate him. The firmament stone quietly explained on behalf of Difui. Master, forget about him. You will soon forget all the memories you have with him. Keeping the memories would only make you suffer. Master, you're always an uncontrollable variable in the eyes of Heavenly Order. In fact, you should have forgotten about him since you came out of the Forbidden Land. I didn't expect you to remember him still. Anyway, it wouldn't be too long now as it's impossible for you to fight against the heavenly laws. Have a good sleep. You will be a new person when you wake up, and you won't remember this painful experience anymore. The firmament stone was glowing in 7 colors to protect Gu Shijio, who was in a deep sleep. Gu Shijio had no idea how long she had been out. Perhaps it was one whole day or just a few hours. Some movements awakened her. My lord! My lord! The sound penetrated her brain like magic and traveled into her mind to wake her up. She slowly opened her eyes. Gu Shijio looked a little slow-witted as she fixed her eyes at the starry sky. Slowly, she sat up and shifted her gaze to the 4 people who knelt in front of her. Those were the 4 messengers, the guardians of the Lord. She then scanned around the surrounding. She frowned as she wondered why she was there alone. Which crystal palace was she in at the moment? Who built it? She felt dizzy and slowly got up as she pressed both sides of her forehead with her fingers. Mu Feng heaved a sigh of relief as she got up. My lord, it's too cold here. It's better for you to get on the shore. Gu Shijio nodded in acknowledgement. Indeed, her entire body was freezing. However, she had the habit of familiarizing herself wherever she went. Therefore, she walked around the place and read all the words written there. Suddenly, she was stunned as she stopped in front of a huge rock. She softly read the words. One has gone after he has done his part without leaving any footprint as a proof. She frowned as she could recognize her own handwriting. Besides that, she had written a long poem. Was she under a spell when she did so? Why would she do so? Her gaze stopped at the character, Fu Yi, and her heart ached when she read it. Instantly, she felt a shadow flash across her mind. Unfortunately, it disappeared soon enough when she wanted to focus on it. Nonetheless, the ache in her heart did not disappear. Suddenly, she realized that her eyes were as swollen as 2 walnuts. Apparently, she cried before she passed out. She also had a sore throat, and she remembered her voice was hoarse when she spoke earlier. She was wondering how she could cry to the extent her eyes were swollen this way. It felt like she has been crying her heart out, but why? In fact, she still remembered that she cried, but she could not recall the reason. Again, her gaze stopped at the poems. She remembered herself trying her best to carve the poems before she fell asleep, as if she wanted to remind herself about something. Gu Shijio then noticed her fingers and saw that there was a relatively fresh blood stain. Besides that, she also realized there were some words on the rocks written with blood. Initially, she felt those words were too messy and wanted to remove some. However, she was somehow drawn to the words and it kept affecting her emotions. Instead of erasing the poems, she applied some cream on her fingers, and they healed almost immediately. Why am I here? She asked Mu Feng with a hoarse and calm voice. Mu Feng heaved a sigh of relief. My lord, you have been acting a little strange since you returned from the Forbidden Land with the purple cloud mushrooms. You couldn't stop searching for someone, and then you rushed out from the Biwu Palace. Who was I looking for? Gu Shijio wondered. She remembered that she wanted to find someone so badly, but she could not recall who. Mu Feng stumbled as he forgot about the name of the person Gu Shijie wanted to find. Therefore he answered, I guess it was just an illusion from the Forbidden Land. You didn't mention a name. Gu Shijie did not continue asking after that. So who built this? Gu Shijie asked. Mu Feng shook his head. It's too old. I guess some ancient people should have built it? Gu Shijie also recognized those designs and displays belonged to some ancient civilization. Her gaze stopped at the two rocking chairs as if she saw a couple leaning next to each other lovingly. She was shocked by the sudden image. Sadly, the vivid memory was gone before she could even see it properly. Her heart ached again involuntarily at the thought of it. Was the Crystal Palace the home of a couple? Perhaps they used to look at the stars here? Both of them must be powerful people. Otherwise, they would not be able to build such an amazing stargazing platform. She took a stroll in the Crystal Palace and saw a phrase of 4 words in one of the hall, Tianchang Dijio. It was a combination of Di Fuyus and Gu Zijius names. Certainly, she recognized her handwriting. She even remembered that she came here before, but she could not remember who her companion was. She felt that she had lost part of her memories. She shifted her gaze back to the 4 characters and felt that the character Jiu referred to herself. How about D? Was that referring to the emperor? Did I fall in love with an emperor? She was frightened by the thought of it. However, she shook her head to dismiss the idea. Emperors were never her cup of tea. She could not imagine falling in love with an emperor. Gu Shijie continued walking and arrived at the doorstep in front of the main entrance. Again she saw a bizarre word. She saw her name carved on the right. There was an arrow of a cupid drawn on the left, but it was blank on the other side of the arrow. She could recognize that she was the one who drew it. She understood the meaning of the drawing as she came from the modern world. However, she just could not believe that she could be so childish and desperate to have a life companion that she would draw something like that. Since she had drawn it, there must be a person who she had in mind at the time. Why did she struggle to remember? She frowned as she fixed her eyes on the heart. She heard a conversation in her head. Why did you draw a heart with an arrow penetrating through it? You have no idea, right? This is an arrow from the love Cupid. Couples who are struck by the arrow will love each other forever. But I feel as if an arrow is penetrating my heart. This conversation suddenly crept into her mind. However, it was extremely soft and unclear. She knew it was a conversation from 2 people, but she could not identify their gender. Gu Shijie wanted to find out more, but soon enough it disappeared again. Was this all an illusion from entering the Forbidden Land? Or did it happen in reality before? Mu Feng was growing impatient. Hence he bowed and reported, My lord, there was a piece of news from the Haoyue Kingdom saying someone claimed himself as a Heaven's Gift disciple. Could you please verify him? Fine, work is the priority. The flowers and leaves wilted as the ground was covered in snow. Gu Shijie returned to the Biwu Palace again after being absent for half a year. Subconsciously, she hated that place. Gu Shijie had traveled directly to the Haoyue Kingdom to test the self-proclaimed Heaven's Gift disciple. However, the result was disappointing. Mu Feng advised her according to the rules that she should put that person into the dark forest after dissolving his spiritual power. Subconsciously, she was irritated by that task. What kind of rules are these? Why are there so many rules? Being the rebellious woman that she is, she put that person into the dark forest without removing his spiritual power. She then returned to the Biwu Palace after solving the issue. However, she felt frustrated and depressed in there, and then left after staying for only half a day. She had no idea what she wanted to do. She had been traveling around as if there was a hole inside her heart, which made her feel empty to the extent she lost her passion in everything. Mu Feng, I remember you said it's always spring all year round in the Biwu Palace? She randomly asked as she noticed snowflakes on her dress and hair. Mu Feng smiled awkwardly. Indeed, that used to be the case. However, this year seems to be slightly different. In fact, the cold breeze had been howling for almost half a year. This strange occurrence was not limited to the Biwu Palace. The weather of the entire continent was also strange. Half a year ago it was summer. However, they had an early fall as the leaves began to fall since June. The temperature started to fall every day since then. Soon enough, everywhere was covered in snow. Snowflakes continued to fall on Gu Zijia's face as she lifted her chin and looked at the sky. She would not feel the cold anymore due to her current level of spiritual power. She merely sat down on a stone bench and continued admiring the snow. Mu Feng was observing her as he waited somewhere nearby. Gu Shijio had not initiated any wizardry barriers. Hence, the snow fell on her freely but did not melt at all. She was sitting there silently as if she was a snow sculpture. Gu Shijio was now carrying a strong cold aura with her. The temperature of her surroundings would drop automatically wherever she visited. In fact, Mu Feng suspected the Lord's emotion was the reason for the strange weather all over the continent. However, he did not dare to tell her. After all, it was winter at that moment. Hence, it was normal for it to be cold. A pair of cranes were hunting for food nearby. Perhaps, it was too cold as they began to cuddle to warm each other up. Gu Shijio narrowed her eyes as she hated to see anything in pairs now. A strong force was formed as she lifted her arm and moved toward the cranes. Both of the cranes immediately flew away as they were frightened. Mu Feng was speechless. The Lord indeed had a very strange temper recently. She hated anything that was lovey-dovey. Therefore, Mu Feng and the other messengers tried to avoid showing up in pairs in front of the Lord to avoid irritating her. Everything seemed normal besides that. Gu Shijio had become the true Lord and began to execute her responsibilities. She remembered that she used to look up to those great people who were at the highest positions. Now, she has become the most powerful person on the continent, and all the citizens even knelt and greeted her. Everyone respected her and built temples for her. That was supposed to be the peak of her entire life, but she did not feel happy at all. She could not even feel her emotions. As she traveled around the continent, she only felt lonely even despite witnessing all the beautiful scenery. Perhaps, that was precisely what she had to experience when she became the most powerful person in the continent. Gu Shijio still felt that a big piece of her heart was missing. Hence, she was wandering around the continent over the past 6 months trying to find some answers. She did not only wander around the Saha world, but also visited Hell and the Monster Kingdom. All 3 realms were very different from each other with unusual phenomena. Unfortunately, she was not impressed at all. Subconsciously, she was looking for something, but she had no idea what it was. She even visited a few of her friends, such as Long Sai from the Tianwen clan, Qian Lingyu from the Haoyue kingdom, Lan Weihu and Yan Chun, Li Mengxia, and many more. She had been to many places, but still could not find anything worth searching for. No matter who she met, she still could not feel anything, as if she subconsciously distanced herself from others. "Master, I think something is wrong. Are you sick?" The firmament stone began to approach her again. Gu Shijio was too lazy to respond. She was a physician after all. Certainly, she would know if she was physically ill. The firmament stone had been talking to her very often recently, and even persuaded her to be more courteous to others. In fact, it thought she was suffering from depression. In fact, she did not intend to commit suicide but thought her life was too long and boring. "Master, there are many more spells you have yet to learn. Why don't you go to the study room? There are plenty of secret scrolls in there." The firmament stone tried to find something for her to do. Gu Shijio had nothing to lose. Hence, she went to the study room. The study room remained the same, but she fixed her gaze at the 2 chairs behind the table. Suddenly, she seemed to have seen 2 people sitting on the chairs. One was reading, and another one was writing. It was such a lovely moment. The one who was reading seemed to have a question, and asked the one who was writing. The one who was writing wrapped his arms around the one who was reading, and began to explain. The one who was reading then wrapped her arms around the man and kissed his chin. Gu Shijio held her breath as she suddenly felt a familiar heartache. She knew it could be an illusion as she often saw these images. However, it used to appear only for a very short time and disappeared in a blink of an eye. She could not see the people clearly, but she felt it was the same 2 people. Strangely, the illusion stayed slightly longer this time. It was probably around 10 seconds. Although it was still a blurred scene, she subconsciously knew that it was a man and a lady. "My lord." Mu Feng reminded her as she was idling in front of the doorstep. She paused a little, then the illusion immediately disappeared. Abruptly, she asked Mu Feng, "Did I fall in love with someone before?" Mu Feng scratched his head. I'm not sure." In fact, he did realize he had forgotten about something, but he could not recall what exactly it was. He paused for a moment as if he recalled something. "My lord, you were once in love with the overlord of the Tianwen clan, and the relationship seemed to be good." Gu Shijie frowned as she certainly remembered something between her and Long Sai. However, part of the memories between the two of them was missing too. Many of the interactions between Gu Shijie and Long Sai involved Difui. Hence, it was normal for her to forget part of it as everything related to Difui had vanished. She frowned and pondered as her gaze stopped at the two chairs again. Were the two people Long Sai and herself? She somehow felt that her obsession was to find out the real identity of these two persons. She left swiftly after stuffing a scroll into her storage space. Mu Feng quickly followed. "My lord, where are you going?" Gu Shijie remained silent. She was the lord. She had no obligation to reveal everything to her subordinates. Certainly, she would use the directed audio spell to contact them if she needed anything. Mu Feng sighed as he watched her disappear into the snow. The lord liked to be alone. She would only contact them when there was something important. Mu Feng was concerned as he looked at the snow out there. It was already February, and the spring buds should be growing by now. However, the weather was still freezing cold, and there was no sign that the ice would melt soon. The sound of a flute lingered around the world. It was amazing. Gu Shijie was standing on a big tree watching a white-robed man playing the flute. The man was charming. He was standing there alone as if he was the most beautiful creature in the world. There was a big lake somewhere nearby, which would never be frozen regardless of how cold the weather could be. The water was moving and splashed against the wall of the shore. It was scenic. However, Gu Shijie suddenly saw that the man changed into a set of purple robes, though she could not see him clearly at the time. The man lifted his head as he heard something, and Gu Shijie was anxious. She suddenly saw a fox-eyes headband, very long black hair, and a smile that had no competition. Certainly, that was an illusion again, as it almost disappeared instantly. Suddenly, she saw a man in front of her. This person was surprised. Shijie. Gu Shijie was slightly disappointed. She leaped and landed onto the ground. "Instructor Long, you're very free today, huh?" Long Sai smiled with a pair of beautiful eyes. "I'm free every day, so you're always welcome, Shijie." Long Sai prepared a table full of dishes for her under a tree. They toasted to each other. However, she did not have any special feeling even though Long Sai tried to impress her. She could still feel the loneliness she used to have, and that made her even more disappointed. Gu Shijie wanted to get to the bottom of everything. Hence, she got Long Sai to play the flute as she was kind of into it at that moment. Long Sai placed the flute under his lower lip and said with a loving gaze, "Shijie, I haven't listened to you sing for ages. Why don't I play a song for you to sing along to?" Gu Shijie did not reject. Perhaps, singing could help to relieve her negative emotions. This time, Long Sai played a song which both of them were familiar with, Jijian Sha by the Legend of the Phoenix. "I remembered you urged me to get onto the horseback as you played the lute under the moonlight in Jiangnan that year. You wanted to stay as you never wanted me to miss you even because you knew that I loved you. You told me fate was like the sands between our fingers. We need to let it go. Regardless of the 4 seasons, I will spend the rest of my life going through all life's struggles with you." The song was lingering around the forest as the sound of the flute was pretty clear. It could be considered a perfect piece from both of them. Suddenly, Gu Shijie felt the scene was very familiar. All of a sudden, she saw a man floating in the lake. The man had very long hair, and was floating on the surface of the water. He was in a red robe as he fixed his eyes on her. She could not see his eyes or even his features, but she could strangely feel the sadness in his eyes. Her heart pumped rapidly as she rushed toward the lake. She was fast. However, she realized there was nothing but cold water when she jumped into the lake. Long Sai was shocked by her actions. He asked as he looked at Gu Shijie, who was still in the lake, "Shijie, are you all right? What's in there?" Gu Shijie was now depressed as she knew it was an illusion again. She shook her head. Nothing much. It's so hot, I just want to take a splash. In fact, she was frustrated and almost burst into tears. She lifted her chin and looked to the sky. It was cloudy, and snowflakes fell on her lashes as well as her face. It made her eyes red. She then rubbed her eyes and squeezed out some water. She frowned as she thought something was wrong with her eyes. In fact, she often tears for no reason, as she usually woke up with a pair of wet eyes and a pain in her chest. Fortunately, she was now in the water, so Long Sai could not differentiate it was water or her tears. Long Sai was still watching her. She did not use any of her spiritual power. Hence, her hair and her face were wet. She was still looking at the sky even though the snowflakes were falling on her face, which made her look pitiful and lonely. He was a little sad as he liked her since long time ago. She was not attached to anyone, but he never heard that she liked anyone too. The saddest part was that she always tried to distance herself from others as though she was waiting for someone. That made it more difficult for others to walk into her heart. He thought of following her around. However, her kung fu was way more powerful now, and she could just appear and leave instantly to the extent he could not catch up. Therefore, he could only passively wait for her arrival. Suddenly, he began to play the flute again. It was Yiren Hongzhuang by Maisie. The lovebirds were busy singing together in a pair. Certainly, Gu Shijie knew this song too, as the lyrics just automatically flashed across her mind. People said if a loving couple could not be together forever, it was also good to spend some time together. Though it was not possible to make it work again, there was a chance to meet in their dreams. She asked herself who was the one she wanted to give the handkerchief with a pair of mandarin ducks. Gu Shijie did not sing along, but returned to the shore after soaking herself in the water for a while. Of course, her clothes were dried the moment she got onto the shore. She leaned against the chair as she listened to Long Sai play. She felt some familiarities. She somehow felt she has once experienced the same thing with someone else. The man was playing the flute as well. Strangely, she saw a man in a purple robe playing the flute in front of her, and a lady leaned against his back with her arms wrapped around his waist. Instructor Long, do you like to wear purple clothes? The song ended abruptly. Long Sai paused for a moment and shook his head. He did not like purple clothes and subconsciously hated this color. However, Shijie, would you like me to wear a purple robe? Gu Shijie really liked him in a purple set of robes. Long Sai did not mind to change his style. Gu Shijie looked at him and shook her head. No, it doesn't suit you. Long Sai remained silent. Gu Shijie wanted to change the topic. She asked another question after a quick ponder. Instructor Long, how much do you know about heaven? Long Sai frowned and shook his head. Not much, it's too mythical. I heard that whoever possesses a level 10 spiritual power can ascend to heaven, but I am not sure if it is true. Gu Shijie was dubious. My spiritual power is above level 10, and Mu Feng, as well as the other messengers, are also at level 10. Why did we not ascend? Long Sai smiled awkwardly. Perhaps it is because you're the Lord. You have to protect the continent, so you can't ascend. Meanwhile, Mu Feng and the rest are your guardians, and their role is to protect you. Naturally, they can't ascend as well. Perhaps, an ordinary person who achieved a level 10 spiritual power could ascend. Gu Shijie pondered and suddenly lifted her head. Instructor Long, you've achieved level 9 now, haven't you? Long Sai nodded. I am above level 9. Thanks for the medicine, Shijie. Half a year ago, Gu Shijie gave him a pill made from the purple cloud mushrooms, and it enhanced his power drastically. Initially, he needed another 8 to 10 years to reach level 9. However, in less than 6 months, he exceeded level 9. Besides that, the pill has completely changed his physique. Based on his progress, he could break through level 10 in just another 1 or 2 decades. Gu Shijie opened her palm. Here are another 2. Long Sai looked at the purple pills, and then looked at her again. Certainly he knew how valuable the pill was. It was not something anyone could buy even if they had plenty of money, but she just gave it to him as if it was as affordable as cabbages. Long Sai was touched. Shijie, the medicine is too valuable. I think it's better for you to keep it for other purposes. Gu Shijie shook her head. It's fine, I want you to achieve level 10 faster. This pill was not really valuable to her as she had a few hundred pills in her storage. Long Sai carefully took it from her with a happy expression. His kung fu was nothing close to Gu Zijia's. Hence, he did not feel compatible with her. However, if he could increase his spiritual power faster, he could stay by her side and protect her. It would definitely boost his confidence. Shijio, I'll try my best to practice and stay by your side. Long Sai promised. Gu Shijio pondered as she looked at him. No, I want you to ascend. Long Sai was stunned. What? I'm very interested to know more about heaven, but I couldn't find a way up. If you ascend, perhaps there will be a passage for me. How about this? Could you inform me when you are close to level 10? Long Sai's face immediately turned dark and depressed. He paused for a while before he answered. Shijio, you seem to be very obsessed with heaven. In fact, heaven might not be as nice as the current world. Heaven is full of many rules. It is not as easygoing as earth. Gu Shijio remained silent. She was indeed obsessed with visiting heaven. She had no idea where the obsession came from, but she had no interest in anyone or anything in this world. Gu Shijio was getting bored, so she patted Long Sai on the shoulder and reminded him. Remember to notify me when you are about to achieve level 10. Swiftly she turned and disappeared. 100 leagues were locked in ice, whirling snow traveled far and wide. The Great Wall, both inside and outside, was covered only in a vast expanse of white. The entire river had come to rest. The mountains were dancing with silver snakes. The plateau hills were filled with wild elephants in white. Adapted from snow, to the tune of Qin Yuan Chun by Mao Zedong. The firmament stone was distraught, so it decided to read the poem to Gu Shijio. Master, take a look at this place. The land has been locked in ice for a year now. It cannot continue like that, the firmament stone commented. Gu Shijio had a clear view from above. The entire world appeared to be in the Ice Age once again with a series of glacial episodes, filled with whirling snow and howling wind. The 4 seasons no longer existed. Every day, there was only winter. The sky was overcast with dark clouds almost every day. They started to forget how warm they used to be under the sun. Every corner on Earth was equally bitterly cold. The frost damaged the crops. Throughout the year, there was no harvest at all. Many people from the 3 kingdoms started to starve. The government began to offer food aid from the granaries, but the temporary solution would not be able to solve the long-term problem. If the situation remained unsolved, more than half of the people on Earth would be starved to death within 3 years. Some places were plagued by violence from the famine victims. Master, you are the Lord. Your mood can easily affect the weather. All these people are your children. They adore you tremendously. Can you watch them as they die from the cold and hunger? Can you watch as the world slowly comes to an end? Master, you cannot go on like this, the firmament stone remonstrated earnestly in her head. Gu Shijio pinched her lips into a thin line and said nothing. Her eyes were as dark as the clear night sky. The firmament stone had been grumbling on about the same topic every other day. Those were the innocent, everyday people. She certainly did not want the world to be covered in ice and snow, but her heart was in a constant state of desolation as if a vast, deserted snow land. There was no way she could keep her spirit up. Master, you will be punished by God. The firmament stone felt apprehensive about Gu Zijia's fate. Gu Shijio swung her sleeve to dismiss its concern. I am not worried about the punishment. She was not even worried about death, let alone the punishment. As her kung fu had achieved an unbeatable level, her appearance slowly changed and she became more stunning. Her beauty was overwhelming. Every time she made an appearance in public, she would certainly create quite a stir. Many men were besotted and fell under the spell of her beauty. Her beauty came as a shock to many women as well, but at the same time, they were a little unhappy about it when they saw their man being so swept away by her charm. To save herself from unnecessary trouble, she started to wear a mask. The mask that she chose was a vile visage. Her beautiful body was completely covered under the huge piece of black cloth, so people could not tell her real gender or identity. Since then, no one had ever fallen for her beauty again. Soon, she gradually enveloped herself in a shroud of mystery. There was a vein of immense melancholy in her character. so her friends would not get too close to her anymore. Her temperament was so cold that they were afraid to get any closer. From a distance, two slipshod children could be seen walking a very long journey. They held on to each other to get warm. In their hands there was a tiny rabbit. Desperately, they were looking for a shelter to get out of the wind and light up the wood, so they could grill the meat. The cold weather came as a torture for the rabbit too. It was thin and weak. It had been surviving solely under the roots of a tree in the thick snow. The weather was unbearably cold. The children were only wearing thin clothes. Before they could get out of the wind, one of the children fell. Another child tried to pull him up but failed, so they both fell to the ground and could not stand up anymore. Wuxia was moved. She raised her hand, and two coats could be seen drifting through the air. The coats then wrapped around the children to keep them warm. The children became warm very quickly as they muffled up in the coats. Immediately, they kneeled and bowed towards the sky as a token of gratitude to the Lord. Wuxia never appeared, nor had the children ever seen her. They only knew they had to bow and offer their hearty thanks to their only guardian, the Lord. The children then proceeded to grill the rabbit. The firmament stone sighed. Master, under the miserable circumstance, out of so many lives, how many people can you possibly help? Wuxia did not respond. She seldom talked or even thought about worldly matters, so the firmament stone could not understand what she was thinking. After a long, quiet pause, she finally answered. What do you want me to do? Cheer up. You have to be happy. You need to feel alive. Master, the land requires a lord who is lively. You can cry or even be angry. At least some emotions are better than deathly stillness. Wuxia hesitated. I cannot do it. She had tried, but she really could not do it. The firmament stone did not know what to do. It was really worried. She could not go on being so miserable, but it did not know what it could do to cheer her up. Honestly, it started to reminisce the days when Di Fui was still the Lord. The world was blossoming in colors. Although there would be wars now and then, the land was always bustling with life. Now the world was merely a land of ice. Wuxia returned to the crystal palace in the sea. She saw the poems that were engraved all over the floor. She sat on the rocking chair and stared blankly at Fuya's name in the poem. Her heart started to ache. For the past year, she hardly had any feelings for anything. Everything flowed away in haste like floating clouds. Nothing could really make her feel anything, but the name of Fui could easily sweep her away in a wave of emotions. The name seemed to mean something profound to her. However, she could not recall the reason. She fell asleep on the rocking chair, and the firmament stone on her wrist started to glimmer with a faint light to cover her body within its halo. The place was too cold. She would freeze if she fell asleep without any covers. Hence, the firmament stone shone with a glimmer of light to keep her warm. Even in her dreams, Wuxia could not help but frown. It was like she was trapped within the depths of her nightmare. The firmament stone was curious. It would like to find out what had been haunting her in her dreams. It was a hill of ice, followed by a vast sea of ice. The snowstorm was wild and raging, as though carrying knives that could easily penetrate anything. There was no one and no sign of life. There was absolutely nothing. To its surprise, it did not expect to find the vast fields of emptiness even in her dreams. It finally found its master, sitting alone in the snow. She was dressed entirely in black. Her dark hair and black robes fluttered in the wind, like a lost butterfly twisting and twirling as if struggling against the cold breeze. It made the firmament stone's heart ache to see her like that. It flew over and comforted her. Master, please do not sit here for too long. You will get sick in the cold. Wuxia looked up. Her eyes were dark and emotionless. No matter where I go, it is still cold. I cannot be sure about that, but what if you take a few steps forward and find spring again? The firmament stone tried to be encouraging. Wuxia sat hugging her legs and refused to move. I will not move. It is the same everywhere. The firmament stone did not know what to do. It could not help but wonder if it was hopeless for Wuxia to feel alive again. Di Fui's death was indeed a pain to her. With memories of him, It was understandable that she would be crushed by her melancholic sentiments. With great love, there would always be great pain. However, now that she had lost every last memory of Difui, why would her life become even more desolate? Before they met, she had always been vigorous and active. Now that she had completely forgotten about Difui, she could not possibly be affected by a loss of love anymore. Should she not return to her usual, energetic self, just like before? Perhaps we should arrange another marriage for her? A voice whispered into its ear. The firmament stone was taken by surprise. It glanced around to find the source of the voice. Who is that? You do not need to know my identity. I am just like you. A voice to convey the heavenly laws. I only exist to assist the new lord. The voice gave no hint of whether it was a man or a woman. The firmament stone turned to look at Gu Shijio. She was still sitting there with her arms around her knees, apparently engrossed in thoughts. Like a statue, she sat there silently without any response to the voice heard by the firmament stone. How would an arranged marriage help? The firmament stone sneered at the voice with contempt. Who could possibly be better than the previous lord, Huang Tu? The voice hesitated. He has unfortunately immortalized. His existence will be completely erased. There is no way for him to come back to the world. The firmament stone suddenly recalled something. According to the heavenly laws, shouldn't Huang Tu ascend to heaven after he died? The heavenly laws cannot be revealed, the voice responded briefly, though somewhat arrogantly. The firmament stone was pissed. Who are you proposing she marry? I honestly do not think anyone on earth deserves her, not even Long Sai. She used to be fond of him, but after her past relationship with Huang Tu, Long Sai is of no significance to her. No one on earth deserves her, but let us not forget that there are people from heaven. In fact, she will be meeting someone from heaven after 200 years, and they will have a happy marriage. However, I do not think the world can survive 200 years with her current condition. The marriage should be brought forward. The firmament stone did not feel so good about people from heaven, but it was curious. Who is the man? He is the son of an emperor from the upper bound. According to the heavenly order, he will be condemned to the earth. They will meet and have a good marriage, till death parts their union on the day she immortalizes. The firmament stone shone in a weak glimmer. The emperor's son? He seems like a very superior man. If you say that their marriage should be brought forward, does it mean that he will be condemned to the earth soon? No, he will not descend to the earth any sooner. However, Gu Shijio can make her way to heaven. The firmament stone was surprised by the offer. Are you suggesting that she can ascend to heaven? Desperate situations call for desperate measures. According to heavenly laws, she can ascend to heaven. However, she cannot stay here forever. The best solution will be for her to stay for 6 months in heaven, and then spend another 6 on earth. The firmament stone finally found a sense of hope. It knew that Gu Shijio had been trying to find ways to ascend to heaven. She finally found her way there. Perhaps seeing the bustling and hustling metropolis in heaven would dazzle her, and at least cheer her up. Which way to heaven? The firmament stone demanded in bright, hopeful light. At the most southern end of the land, there is a tree, tall enough to reach the sky. It appears to be fiery red. If she climbs it high enough, she will arrive at the desired destination. After providing the firmament stone with the crucial information, the voice seemed to have left. The firmament stone started to contemplate the suggestion given by the messenger from heaven. As it pondered, it noticed a sudden drastic change in its environment. It quickly glanced around and saw something surprising. The sky was in utter darkness, and the land was covered entirely by snow. However, in the distance, there was a faint glow of purple light. A fog seemed to block the light, so the purple glow was only dimly discernible. In a blurred vision, there appeared to be a man, standing in the purple mist. Gu Shijio finally stood up, her eyes resting on the figure in the purple mist. Her expression clearly showed that she was mesmerized. Slowly, she drifted towards the purple mist. The firmament stone followed her. It was sure that the surroundings had indeed become warmer after the emergence of the purple mist. The cold was less miserable. Was the purple mist the source of her happiness? Was it the only thing that could make her feel alive in the abyss of her sorrowful soul? Gu Shijiu continued her pursuit of the purple mist. Like a mirage that mimicked her desperation. It seemed that she could never make it far enough to catch the purple mist. Master, it is an illusion. You will never make it, so do not waste time on it. Gu Shijiu ignored the firmament stone and continued her fruitless pursuit. It was, after all, her dream. The firmament stone would like to see if she could finally get what she hoped for, so it kept quiet and followed her instead. After a while, the purple mist disappeared into thin air. Gu Shijiu stopped and stared helplessly at the disappearance of the purple mist. Tears started to fill her eyes. The firmament stone felt terrible for her at first. Suddenly an idea came to it. When Gu Shijiu woke up from her dream, she was surprised to find herself being in a purple sea. The corals were purple. The seaweed was purple. Even the shells were purple. The surroundings displayed a glittering array of different purple tones. She sat by staring blankly, lost in thoughts. The firmament stone wanted to bring some excitement to Gu Shijiu. Master, take a look at this. Isn't this pretty? Gu Shijiu frowned in dismay. She liked purple a lot, but never wished for the entire surroundings to become purple, especially the purple seaweed. The seaweed had covered all the words that she had engraved on the floor. Intuitively, she did not wish to change anything about the layout. Every time she visited the place, she would grieve and at the same time, feel a sense of belonging about the place. She waved her hands and the purple gardens, which the firmament stone had painstakingly arranged, disappeared almost instantaneously. Everything returned to its usual state. Do not try to change anything. I do not like it. Gu Shijiu answered with a hint of disapproval. The firmament stone did not manage to cheer her up, so the failed attempt dispirited it. Master, I just want you to be happy. Gu Shijiu dismissed its concern. There is no need to make any mess. Suddenly, the directed audio spell that was hung at her waist started to flicker. She picked it up and heard Long Sai panting anxiously at the other end. Shijiu, I think I am about to be struck by the catastrophe that one faces before advancing to level 10. Thick, red clouds started to roll in and fill the entire sky in tints of red, as though there was an emerging red sun with all its shimmering rays hidden behind the clouds. The clouds drew closer towards the sky above the Tianwen mountain, turning the air into a red glow. The unusual sign was indeed alarming. The common people looked up to the sky, trying to get a clue of what was truly happening. The disciples of the Tianwen clan were frightened out of their wits. Ominous red clouds were gathering overhead, like an entire mountain of flames that was about to crush down from above. Mu Feng and the rest of the messengers knew what was going to happen. They were a few hundred miles away from the Tianwen clan, fighting against the ice monsters that emerged under the cloak of snow and ice. These ice monsters were strong, plunging many lives into the abyss of death and misery. Many practitioners had, unfortunately, become their victims, as the monsters had completely absorbed their power. It was a rather tough fight, so all four messengers had to work together. The fight between the ice monsters and the messengers was reaching its climax when they saw the incoming catastrophic red clouds. It came as a shocking sight. Mu Feng could not hold back his frustration. I wonder who is going to undergo the catastrophe at this perfect timing. Other than working as the guardians of the Lord, the four messengers actually had another duty to fulfill, which was to protect anyone who was undergoing the catastrophe before advancing to level 10. They had to offer their protection personally to provide against any misfortune. The catastrophe was, after all, very life-threatening. It was also known as the celestial catastrophe. Forget about becoming a celestial being. Slight negligence even before advancing to level 10 would cost one's life. He or she could be struck by lightning. Also, advancing to level 10 would require the consumption of some specific herbal pills. Before one was going to advance to level 10, he or she would have to take the pills from the messenger and mention in passing that the catastrophe would soon be coming, so the four messengers could get themselves prepared. This time, no one mentioned anything about getting the pills from the messengers. How could one face the catastrophe so suddenly? Mu Feng could not care less about the ice monsters anymore. The clouds seemed to be going towards the direction of the Tianwen clan. Mule, you and I should go and take a look. Mu Dian and Mu Yun, both of you should stay and fight. Mule responded. Could it be Long Sai? His kung fu is the highest among them all. If it is him, I think we should notify the Lord about it. Mu Feng looked up into the sky and muttered. There is no need to notify. The Lord is already on her way. He saw a gleam of 7 colored rays flashing across the sky, like a falling star heading towards the Tianwen mountain. Only the Lord possessed such radiance. Throughout the year, although Gu Zijia's temperament had become gradually unapproachable, her kung fu had become stronger day by day. Mu Feng still remembered how Gu Shijiu used to be before she entered the Buddha Fire Land. Before, her kung fu was not of the highest quality yet. However, her transformation after that was remarkable. Her kung fu had significantly increased. Her kung fu used to be at level 10, but now her strength was unfathomably strong. If the Lord was going to look into the situation personally, then the 4 messengers would no longer be needed so urgently. They should take care of the ice monsters instead. All 4 of them then continued to lay siege to the ice monsters. After half an hour, they finally got rid of the ice monsters. The fight left them breathless. A streak of blood-red lightning momentarily illuminated the sky and turned into a roar of thunder. It struck the Tianwen mountain, and they could hear a single sharp crash of thunder. All 4 of them were utterly shocked. The catastrophe is happening to the man. Mu Feng shouted out loud and dashed to the scene as quickly as he could. The catastrophe had officially begun. Streaks of lightning flashed across the sky continuously. From afar, Mu Feng could clearly see that a man was hurled to the winds. Countless streaks of lightning continued to strike the man. The man was enveloped in a faint circle of 7 colored rays. Apparently, the Lord had offered her help to him. The overlord of Tianwen clan is going through the catastrophe. He is advancing to level 10. Will he finally become a celestial being? It is hard to say. Some people chose to stay in the mortal world even after they have achieved level 10. However, I heard that most people choose to ascend to heaven. He would only ascend to heaven if he has no attachment to earth, right? However, Overlord Long has a lot to be concerned about. Many practitioners came to the scene upon hearing the news. They gathered around at the hills of the Tianwen mountain and glanced upward nervously while engaging in a heated discussion. Mu Feng sighed. Was Long Sai going to ascend to heaven? He was, after all, a very trustworthy friend of the Lord. The Lord was livelier when she visited him. Sometimes they would share a few glasses of wine and a meal together, or even sing a few songs. If he really ascended to heaven, the Lord would be completely alone. If they were not mistaken, Long Sai would not leave the Lord alone. Anyway, the decision was not going to be made right now. When one was facing the catastrophe, most of the people would not be able to break into the circle where the lightning struck. Terror-stricken, most of them could only stand aside and watch nervously. The sky above Long Sai was shrouded in roars of thunder. The man painstakingly avoided the streaks of lightning by shifting swiftly from side to side. Gu Shijiu stood not too far away from him. She had added a wizardry barrier around his body to help him resist at least half of the fierceness of the lightning strikes. She had faith in Long Sai that he would make it through. She stared blankly at the red clouds and was hit by a sudden realization. She could roughly recall that the clouds were not the same red color when she was going through the catastrophe herself. She had a dim recollection of a man protecting her closely by her side. When the thunder struck, the man held her close in his arms. However, she could not remember how the man looked like. As far as she was concerned, an outsider was not able to participate in the catastrophe. So how did the man get close enough to protect her from the streaks of lightning and thunder? She looked up to the sky and was caught in a trance. Suddenly, she recalled a familiar voice. "Baby, don't you be afraid. I am here. I am not afraid of anything as long as you stay by my side." It was a conversation between 2 people, but she could not tell if it was between a man and a woman. Her heart ached terribly upon hearing the voice though. She clenched her fist tightly in frustration. Who was the person? And why did he call her baby? Was it a way to address her? How could she possibly accept such a nauseating title? She was a little absent-minded while being lost in her own thoughts. Suddenly, the crowd exclaimed nervously, "Look! A cloud channel! There is a cloud channel!" Gu Shijio looked up, and was immediately delighted. The streaks of blood-red lightning finally ended. Long Sai was burned to a cinder, like a book that had been completely scorched. However, he slowly rose from within the clouds. Behind him, a passage formed within the thick, red clouds, connecting him to the skies. A flash of gold light shone unexpectedly from the sky, enveloping Long Sai within its halo. Along with the flash of gold light, he slowly floated into the air and landed directly on the blood-red path. However, the gleam of gold light disappeared, leaving Long Sai in his usual appearance. His dark, black robes returned to its usual charming light blue. He was ascending to become a celestial being. The crowd started to cheer enthusiastically. In a single bounce, Gu Shijio dashed to the red passage as quickly as she could. Long Sai looked at Gu Shijio fixedly and murmured, "Shijio, as you wish, I am finally becoming a celestial being." He stood hesitantly on the red cloud passage for a while. Swiftly, he then turned into a flash of light and drifted directly above. Soon he disappeared within the thick, red clouds in the distant sky. Gu Shijio landed on the bloody red passage, but it started to disperse as soon as she touched the clouds. She was shocked. She tried to chase after the passage, but when she finally made it, the cloud passage had disappeared entirely. She stood above the clouds and watched as the clouds quickly returned to their usual, observable white. Long Sai was gone. If Gu Shijio was not mistaken, he had ascended to heaven and become a celestial being. However, Gu Shijio was not given a chance to join him. She was desperate to ascend to heaven. She had no idea where the idea came from, but it had somehow become her obsession. Sadly, the way to heaven was nowhere to be found. She had been anticipating the day when Long Sai finally became a celestial being. Unfortunately, she did not get what she was hoping for. The result was very disappointing. Snow sluiced down over the earth as Gu Shijio stood in the clouds contemplating what had happened. Suddenly, the firmament stone started talking to her. "Master, it is not impossible to ascend to heaven. I know how." Gu Shijio was obviously surprised. "How?" "There is a pathway that connects the lower bound to heaven. If you find it, you can work your way up," the firmament stone continued. "Where is the pathway?" "At the most southern end of the earth, there is a tree tall enough to reach the sky. It appears to be fiery red. If you climb it high enough, you will arrive at heaven." The firmament stone told her what it learned from the mysterious voice. "There are too many uncertainties. Do you know the specific location?" "About that, Master, that is all that I know." The trunk was fiery red in color. Every piece of its leaves resembled the indentation of Buddha's handprint, making it look somewhat transcendental to the spiritual realm. It was a tall tree standing at 1,000 feet. The top of the tree was lost amid the depths of the clouds. At this very moment, Gu Shijio was standing at the top of the tree. The firmament stone was very impressed, for she handled things quickly and dexterously. First, she met up with the 4 messengers and gave them some instructions. Then, she departed immediately. The most southern part of the land was indeed a very vast area. Furthermore, every inch of the land was covered heavily in snow. The firmament stone initially thought that it would not be challenging to look for the tree in a vastly white field. However, the search proved it otherwise. Gu Shijio flew south along with the firmament stone. They were now in the profound depths of the South Polar Circle, but the tall tree was nowhere to be seen. Gu Shijio had spent more than 2 weeks searching for the tree in the south. Just when the firmament stone started to think that the voice might have misled it about the existence of the tree, Gu Shijio finally found it in the auroras. Gu Shijio teleported immediately towards the aurora, but a wizardry barrier halted her way. Almost instantaneously, the auroras disappeared, along with the tree. The tree was nowhere to be seen in the 100-mile radius where it used to stand. Gu Shijio decided to stay, waiting patiently for the auroras to reappear. The wait lasted about 2 weeks. At the South Pole, the frequency of the aurora emergence was rather high. The auroras graced the high altitudes dozens of times a day. However, the tree did not show up. The firmament stone believed that it was merely an illusion, and thought that she should not be spending too much time on something so surreal. However, Gu Shijie would not change her mind when she was determined to prove herself. The firmament stone continued to bombard her with facts, hoping she would change her mind. Instead, Gu Shijie answered firmly, "I believe that it is here." Gu Shijie was about to ascend to heaven. What could she possibly find in the land above? The firmament stone could tell that the thick ice that covered the world was starting to melt away. Perhaps Gu Shijie finally found a sense of hope for what she had been waiting for. "Master, why are you so obsessed about heaven? Perhaps heaven isn't all that it is said to be. It may not even be as good as our world." Gu Shijie shook her head and answered, "I do not know." She was indeed obsessed about the idea of ascending to heaven, as if there was something that she had been hoping to find. A conversation flashed before her eyes. "About me, it is not entirely hopeless. I may not be gone forever even after the immortalization. I may ascend to heaven." She closed her eyes, trying to recall more of the conversation. She did not even know who was the one talking to her, but she was confident that he was someone of utmost importance. It was a shame that she had forgotten about him. She could tell that the person must be a man. She knew she was not a homosexual. She tried to find out more from the people around, but no one was aware of the existence of the man. Mu Feng had always thought that her extended period of stay in the Forbidden Land must have caused some complications, leaving her with the constant illusion about the man. She was not sure about that theory either. Affected by her constant depression, her heart filled with dead ashes. The man in her illusion was her last hope to revive her utterly dissipated heart. The firmament stone continued to talk with her, but Gu Shijie seemed absent-minded. She was utterly oblivious to its excessive talk. The firmament stone stared helplessly at her. Gu Shijie used to be unapproachable, but at least she was quite lively. Occasionally, she would talk with it by sharing a little of what she was thinking, or even make some jokes. Now she would not answer anything, no matter how it tried to get her attention. Talking with someone so unresponsive was like talking to the air. The firmament stone was disappointed, but it could not tell her about it. All of a sudden, Gu Shijie repositioned her body in an alert posture. Swiftly, she teleported and moved towards the site of the auroras. The firmament stone was dazzled, as the auroras flashed vibrantly before its eyes. When it finally realized what happened, Gu Shijie was already standing on a tree. The tree was fiery red with indented leaves of Buddha's handprint. Of great heights, the tree extended into the clouds. The end was unobservable. It was the sky-bridging tree. She finally found it. When she was dashing through the wizardry barrier, she had also performed some spell at the same time to make her entry successful this time. The firmament stone felt a sense of relief, for she had been carrying it tightly on her wrist. Otherwise, it would not be able to make its way through the barrier at all. The entire spectacular scene disappeared instantly. Who could have possibly noticed the tree within the glistening lights? Even Di Fui was not aware of its odd existence. Surely, he did not come looking for it in the lights. The firmament stone looked at Gu Shijie again, and realized a faint sense of hope in her eyes. She looked upward and was prepared to make a rapid advance. The firmament stone quickly warned her. "Master, once you are on the tree, you must not be away from it. You cannot use cloud manipulation magic. You can only climb it physically by stepping upward. If you teleport, it will disappear." "All right." Gu Shijie answered confidently and started the climb by hand. The tree stood firmly upright, and she could only use her physical strength to climb it. Along the way, there were even some ferocious beasts. Fortunately, Gu Zijie's kung fu was strong enough. The beasts were all approaching level 8, but she could easily take them out and get rid of them from the tree. The higher that Gu Shijie climbed, the more ferocious the beasts that she had to fight. Occasionally, there were event traps to swallow any mortals who made the climb. The firmament stone was anxious. The mere sight of the challenges was more than enough to put it off. The place seemed indeed unreachable. For anyone who broke in, He or she would easily be torn apart by the beasts or swallowed as a whole in the hidden traps. He or she would never get to see the top. Only Gu Shijio could make it past the challenges on the path. The climb took her an entire day. Finally, she made it to the top. Gu Shijio defeated a 5-colored bird that looked down upon all mortal beings. When the bird caught sight of her on the tree, it was extremely contemptuous of her. It demanded her to leave the tree, or she would become its meal. Gu Shijio launched her attack before it finished talking. An hour later, Gu Shijio had 2 scratches on her arms. As for the 5-colored bird, it almost lost all of its feathers on its tail. In the end, Gu Shijio managed to put her sword on its throat, threatening to take its life. The 5-colored bird surrendered immediately and agreed to take her to heaven. Therefore, Gu Shijio climbed onto its back. The bird activated an unknown mechanism on the tree, and a cloud pathway of vibrant colors emerged, guiding it all the way to the top. The firmament stone observed the flashing clouds and was worried. "Master, should we trust the bird? If we ride it up, how should we come back down? Will it help us again?" "We will see when we get there," Gu Shijio answered casually. "We cannot do that. We have to think about our way back. After all, you can only stay in heaven for 6 months. We have to come back down when the time is up." "Who decided that I can only stay for 6 months?" Gu Shijio was irritated. "It is the heavenly law." Gu Shijio did not bother to entertain the firmament stone again. She was disgusted by the heavenly laws and would never obey it. For a year, she had been doing things that were against the heavenly laws to trigger anyone who was behind the plan. As a result, the voice that had been blabbering in her ears disappeared completely. She was eager to know what it was like to be in heaven. As far as she was concerned, heaven should be a place on another planet. From what she knew, the closest planet from the Earth that was suitable to support life was a few thousand light years away. It was not easy to go beyond a few light years in an instance. Gu Shijio stared at the 5-colored cloud pathway attentively. The cloud pathway was as vibrant as a rainbow. Occasionally, some vortexes would emerge along the path. The bird would dive into the vortex, drawing it quickly across, from one space to another. She had been through spaces that were either filled with raging flames, or black auras, or even flying sand and rolling pebbles. However, it would take a while before she could get a clear look at her surroundings. Astonished, she could not help but wonder if it was how time traveling looked like. After going through the 81st vortex, layers of buildings finally emerged amidst the clouds. The buildings glistened in shiny gold. Even the air was filled with a celestial aura, carrying with it peace and prosperity. The 5-colored bird swayed its wings and plunged. "I see this is how heaven looks like," the firmament stone whispered into her ears. "It somewhat resembles how our legends used to portray it. Except for the clouds and the celestial aura, it is not very different from Earth." Gu Shijio did not answer it. The 5-colored bird carried her all the way to a giant square. She took the time to admire the marvelous square. The ground was paved with pale green jade stones into different auspicious designs. The plaza was wreathed in a vibrant luminescence. The plaza bustled with people who dressed in a similar appearance. Some people dressed in blue robes, some in green. Some were in white. The ones in blue and green were obviously of lower statuses. They had been following the people in white robes in one direction, seemingly well disciplined. Their behaviors were quiet and orderly. Gu Shijio maintained her usual appearance with her black robe and the obviously vile-looking mask. When she landed, she was clearly an outstanding one. Immediately, she attracted many curious eyes. Gu Shijio could not care less about the attention. Except for the people in colored robes, there were children in different clothing which looked somewhat like a uniform. Some of these children were sweeping the floor. Others were feeding the birds in the square. All in all, the children were doing the chores, so they were clearly the servants. The legends were true. In heaven, the spiritual power that one possessed was at least level 9. She could tell from their glistening aura that shone faintly, like a halo. These children's servants were obviously the lowest in the ranking, which was still about level 9. The people in blue and green were at level 10 or so. The ones in green, however, were slightly better than the ones in blue. The men in white robes, the ones that were leading the way, possessed a celestial aura that proved them to be at least level 10 and above. The mortals from the earth had to achieve a particular milestone to ascend to heaven, so anyone of spiritual power at level 10 would be considered as one of the best. Social segregation of classes still existed. The recognition for spiritual power in heaven, however, might differ from earth. What were the standards in heaven? Did she belong in the middle or lower class? As Gu Shijio had just arrived, she was completely unsure of the standards. A young man in white robes approached her. "How can I address you?" As a passerby, Gu Shijio answered briefly. The man in white was confused. He sized Gu Shijio with curious eyes, but still could not figure out her origin. "Where are you from?" "Earth." The man in white frowned in bewilderment. "Your information is too general. There are so many people from Earth." He then pointed at some of the blue and green men. "They have ascended from different parts of the Earth. There are hundreds of thousands of regions. Can you be more specific about the continent where you came from?" She obviously did not know that there were hundreds of thousands of regions. The men in blue robes caught Gu Zijia's attention. These men were wearing similar blue robes as Long Sai after he survived the catastrophe. All the blue robes were of similar handicrafts, if not identical. The only difference to tell them apart was the embroidery pattern at the corner of their robes. The men in blue and green were in a total of about 180 people. Apparently, they had just arrived in heaven as well, as they looked somewhat excited. She took a quick glance at these people, but could not see Long Sai. The young man was still waiting for an answer, so she answered him accordingly. He was obviously perplexed. "You do not seem like you have just ascended." She found the sky bridging tree. "I was defeated, so I had to carry her here." The five-colored bird told the man about their encounter. Surprisingly, it had not left. The man in white took a look at the tail of the five-colored bird that was almost bald. "I got it," he answered with a nod. He turned to look at Gu Shijio again. "I can see that you are a very capable person. Please proceed as you wish." This time he did not sound as arrogant as before. The same situation had not happened for thousands of years. It was normal to have people in heaven through proper ascension, but cases like Gu Shijio were extremely rare. The man was ready to leave, but Gu Shijio had to find out more. "Mr. Immortal, do you have a minute? I want to ask you about a man." The young man responded with a smile. "Miss, I see that you are unclear about the rules and courtesies here. You cannot simply address others the way you did earlier." He then pointed at the men in blue and green. "These are the people who have just ascended, so they are the lowest rank. You can refer to them as the junior immortals. As for me, I have been around long enough to become a middle immortal." The man in white was very gentle and refined. The way he talked was also very courteous. There were 3 kingdoms here: the Celestial Kingdom, the Devil Kingdom, and the Monster Kingdom. The place where Gu Shijio currently stood was the Celestial Kingdom, also known as Saha World. There were 5 ranks in the Celestial Kingdom: the Junior Immortal, the Middle Immortal, the Senior Immortal, the Golden Immortal, and the Mighty Immortal. Gu Shijio watched as these men in blue and green slowly entered a room that looked somewhat odd. These Junior Immortals once possessed excellent capabilities, so they did not seem awkward or shy of strangers. Most of them seemed to have a laudable aura. Although they were equally bewildered about the odd room, they behaved with great composure. When they left the room, they seemed to be more confused than before. They slowly followed the man in white in a queue. They seemed very worried. Gu Shijio did not understand the reason behind their sudden change of behavior, so she had to ask the man about it. Hesitantly, the man explained. Since these men have already ascended to heaven, they have to leave their past behind. All their memories will be completely erased. Gu Shijio took an immediate aversion to the newly introduced rule. Erasing every bit of one's past was no different than having a reincarnation. Is that what had happened to Long Sai? Had all of his memories been erased? She continued to ask about Long Sai's whereabouts. Every day, there are a few hundred people who arrive. I cannot recall at once about this man that you are inquiring about. However, I can look it up for you. The man offered with a smile. Apparently, He had mistaken Gu Shijiu as a woman who was looking for her husband. He paused before he continued. Miss, most of the people here will be required to break off all relationships from their previous life and start anew. All solemn pledges and eternal vows mean nothing when they come here. If he was here weeks ago, I am afraid he no longer remembers you by now. Gu Shijiu answered casually. You have mistaken my intention. He is a friend of mine and that is all. The man heaved a sigh of relief. That is great. Speaking of which, did you come here without any official agenda? Don't you have any official errands to attend to? Gu Shijiu thought about it for a moment. She was here to search for a man who she knew nothing about. She was sure about two things. He was a man who liked to wear purple. She knew nothing more. The information was not very specific, so how could she look for the man? Nonetheless, she decided to give it a try. Out of those who have ascended, do you recall any man who wears purple? The man was surprised by her question. Soon he answered with a delightful tone. Miss, you must be kidding. All the men who have ascended to heaven will wear the same robes, either blue or green. Their preferences on earth will no longer matter. They will only dress according to their character and spiritual level. Those who are eligible to wear purple did not come here by ascending from the earth. Very exclusive people will only wear purple. Suddenly, a gleam of colorful rays flashed across the sky. A carriage carried by 8 majestic horses emerged amidst the clouds. It soon landed in the square. The young man smiled at her and said, Look, the celestial being that is eligible to wear purple has just arrived. Gu Shijiu took a look at the carriage and caught an unusual sight. The carriage was indeed exquisite, as the entire carriage was painted elegantly in white. At the top of the carriage stood a phoenix with its head held high. These things did not come as a surprise to Gu Shijiu. What surprised her the most was that she finally saw Long Sai. Long Sai was still wearing the same pale blue robes that she last saw him wear. Also, he was holding a loop in his hand that served as a whip. There he sat, on the shaft of the carriage. It turned out that he had become a hostler. He was not entirely familiar with driving a cart, so the carriage bumped a little over the ruts when he made the stop. Idiot! A stern rebuke could be heard. The voice sounded like it came from a woman. Yes. Long Sai murmured. The lady held the curtains as she slowly exited the carriage. The lady was beautiful, but her expression clearly showed that she was annoyed. Obviously, she had a condescending attitude towards Long Sai. Stretch out your hand, she fiercely demanded. Hesitantly, Long Sai did as told. Immediately, there was a gleam of yellow ray flashing from the lattice hand. Long Sai's palm took the full impact from the lattice strike. The impact was loud and clear. Everyone in the square was alarmed. There was a severe injury on Long Sai's palm. The strike had cut his flesh deep enough to reveal his bone. It was a bloody sight, and his face turned pale while his forehead broke out in cold sweat. The lady threw a bottle to him like she was giving alms to a beggar. Idiot, apply this. Gu Shijiu was infuriated. Long Sai had been working so hard to ascend. He did it all for her, so he could help her find the way to heaven. Long Sai's words still rang in her ears the moment before he ascended. Shijiu, as you wished, I am finally ascending. He was clearly unhappy with his current situation. Gu Shijiu had always thought that ascending to heaven would provide him with better resources and treatment. He certainly did not work his way up here to be deceived. Before she made a move, the man pulled the corner of her sleeve to stop her and said softly, Miss, mind your own business. Do not interfere. Swiftly, Long Sai leaped the shaft and stood next to the carriage with his head held high. The lady in light blue robes held a golden ruler in her hand. The ruler was no ordinary ruler. Both edges of the ruler were as sharp as the cutting edge of a sword. It shone glamorously under the sun. She leaped from the carriage and pointed the ruler at Long Sai. Bend down. How many times do I have to tell you to be aware of that? Your idiocy is beyond redemption. Long Sai's handsome face started to flush with indignation. He clenched his fist without saying anything. The lady in light blue robes decided to hit him with the ruler. Idiot, how dare you defy me? Apparently, the lattice kung fu was extraordinary, judging from the flash of the ruler with every strike. The ruler was aiming at Long Sai's mouth. Once hit, he would suffer severe injuries on his lips. As the carriage was indeed eye-catching, many people were attracted by the incident and stared curiously at them. There were different reactions upon seeing the lattice behavior. Some were surprised. Some were infuriated. Others were already used to it. The man beside Gu Shijio heaved a disapproving sigh. This is really... He stopped abruptly when he realized the lady in black disappeared before his eyes. The lady was standing right next to him, and both of them were standing more than 10 feet away from the carriage. However, in an instant, she appeared right next to the carriage. She held a silver rope in her hand, chaining the wrist of the lady in blue. The lady screamed out loud. The lady in blue screamed out loud in pain, involuntarily releasing her grip of the golden ruler. Coincidentally, the ruler dropped and hit her hand. The sharp edge of the ruler cut through the flesh on the back on her hand, seemingly severer than the injury that Long Sai had suffered. Blood streamed down. Gu Shijio moved very swiftly, so the lady in blue could not see her coming at all. When she finally got a grasp of what was happening, a small bottle of medicine hit her on her head. Use this. It is better than the one you have. Bewildered, the lady tried to consume the medicine with fumbling efforts. She could feel the pain on her face where the bottle had hit. The back of her hand hurt too. The lady had never been treated that way before, so she paused in disbelief. Soon, she started to complain and threw the bottle back at Gu Shijio. How dare you? Where did this rude woman come from? How dare you attack me? This is outrageous. Outrageous. Before she was done with her complaints, a figure flashed before her eyes. She stood, transfixed, unable to see. Crack, crack, crack. 3 crisp slaps could be heard on her face, stopping her from clamoring any further. She was obviously baffled. She took a few quick steps backward and looked at Gu Shijio in disbelief. You. The 3 slaps were enough to cause her to have a bloody nose. Her cheeks were ashen and swollen. Gu Shijio stood upright in her black attire that fluttered in the wind. I am teaching you a lesson for your arrogance and impoliteness. Gu Shijio answered with a cold tone. She waved the bottle in her hand. I see that you have refused my kind offer. I hope you will not regret it. Swiftly, she kept the bottle back in her sleeve. Who do you think you are? You are not entitled to teach my servants. An authoritative voice could be heard coming from the carriage. A lady in a purple robe emerged from behind the curtains. The color of her robes was in pale purple. The lady was exquisite, but with an attitude of conceit. By the looks of her poise, she seemed like a royalty. As soon as the lady emerged, all the men in white kneeled and bowed before her. Princessia. The rest of the people in green and blue robes kneeled as well. They looked at each other in bewilderment, but decided to follow the gesture of the men in white. She was a princess. The social ladder in heaven was no different from earth. Royalty was at the top of the pyramid. Princessia was not interested in the men on the floor. She turned and gave Gu Shijio a sharp look. Why didn't you bow before me? The injured lady in blue was the princess servant. Her master's appearance gave her a boost. She stood glowering at Gu Shijio and demanded, kneel. Gu Shijio would not kneel. She was not a member of heaven. Why should she have to kneel? Gu Shijio answered coldly. I find no reason why I should kneel or bow before you. Princess, she is the lord of the starry crescent land. This is the first time for her to be here, so she is unaware of the customs. I implore you to show mercy, Princessia. Please excuse her for her misbehavior. The man in white started to explain on her behalf. Princessia gave her a scornful look and smiled sarcastically. I do not want to bother myself arguing with the likes of her. Ming Lang, tell her about the customs here, so she knows how to behave. Hesitantly, Ming Lang agreed. He braced himself and proceeded to share with her more of the general knowledge about this place. From his explanations, Gu Shijio could finally get a grasp of the general structure of heaven. In the celestial kingdom, there was a king known as the Emperor Immortal. The customs were more or less the same as the ones in the mortal world. The royalty had the most power. In the celestial kingdom, almost every other celestial being, regardless of their ranks, was required to kneel and bow before royalty. There were another two major groups, the native group and the ascendant group. The native group consisted of the immortals that were born and nurtured in the celestial kingdom. The ascendant group was made up of the people from different regions Earth. The natives were considered nobler than the ascendants, so they were more politically powerful in different sectors of the celestial kingdom. Most of the officers ranked 4 and above were the natives. The ascendants were regarded as socially inferior. The ascendants would only be appointed as officers ranked 4 and below. Most of the servants, gardeners, and soldiers were the ascendants due to their inferiority. Princess Yi was the foster daughter of the Emperor Immortal. He doted on her like she was his own daughter. She was here because her residence was short of staff. She had to visit often to handpick the servants. Long Sai was selected not long ago due to his handsome appearance and extraordinary ability. He often said nothing, as if in a trance, so the army was not interested in him. After his memory had been completely erased, he seemed more dumbfounded than usual. People like him would only be assigned with rough work. Princess Yi thought that becoming a cleaner was a waste of his good looks, so she requested for him to become her hostler and personal carriage stool. Whenever she had to step down from the carriage, she would step on his back like a stool while he kneeled on the ground. Long Sai was not a keen learner, so Princess Yi's servant Jing Er would often scold him to teach him some manners. From Ming Lang's statement and Jing Er's occasional opinions, Gu Shijiu finally understood the context. She said nothing and stared fixedly at Long Sai instead. Their eyes met, but the way he looked at him was different. It was as if she was looking at a stranger. From his eyes, she could tell that he was equally curious and concerned about her. Gu Shijiu heaved a sigh and disregarded Princess Yi completely, who had been waiting for an apology. "Instructor Long, do you recognize me?" she asked. Bewildered, Long Sai shook his head. His memory had been completely erased. "Are you willing to stay with her and become her hostler?" Gu Shijiu gave him a fixed, stern look. The audience was surprised, for the only thing that she was concerned about after knowing the truth was his compliance. The servant, Jing Er, remarked sarcastically, "Our princess has chosen him because of his honest and presentable looks. At least she did not feel an antipathy against his clumsiness. It should be an honor to him. He should regard it as a compliment. Do you know about the ascendants that were in the same batch as him? Some are gardeners. Some are cleaners. They have all been assigned to places that are not favorable for their spiritual power." Jing Er, shut up. Princess Yi suddenly interrupted her. Jing Er was shocked, for she knew that she had said something that angered her master. Her voice was rather loud, so the recent ascendants in blue and green robes were dumbfounded. They had not had their memory erased yet. On Earth, these people were the real movers and shakers, all with enormous capabilities. They had always thought about heaven as a place for them to live a happy afterlife. They thought they would be able to travel around freely without a care about the world. On the contrary to their hopes, they were here to become servants. It was no wonder that their memory had to be erased in order to prevent them from acting against their orders. These people stood gazing at one another, unsure of what to do. Intuitively, they took a few steps backward. The man in white had to comfort them. "Everyone, there is no room for being overly concerned. All of you here are great talents. I am sure the heaven will appreciate all of your contributions. You will be assigned with good jobs. In fact, heaven is currently short of soldiers. Those of you with extraordinary kung fu can easily be promoted to become generals. If you cannot achieve a higher rank at the moment, you can work as servants temporarily to accumulate more experience. Things will flow smoothly. When the opportunity comes, you can become a general or even an officer." "Why do you have to erase our memory?" a curious voice rose. "It is to keep you focused while you grow. We know very well about the methods of cultivation and practice. With our memory erased, I am afraid that we will have to start from the very beginning, thus delaying our progress even more." A voice fought back. The man in white was obviously responsible for them. He sighed, trying to find the words to explain himself. "These are the rules in the celestial kingdom. Those who wish to stay must have their memory erased. If you are unhappy about it, you can go back to where you came from. Princess Ye interrupted scornfully. The crowd was astonished. In fact, the threat was working as all of them worked hard to be here, so they were unwilling to leave just like that. Moreover, there was no way back to Earth. The square went into a dead silence. Princess Ye was happy that she was able to control the crowd. Wherever you go, there will be rules. Now that you are here in the Celestial Kingdom, you surely have to obey the rules here. Don't worry. The Celestial Kingdom will not let go of any talents. Once you are strong enough, you will all become the pillars of our kingdom. The job of a servant is nothing difficult. Also, the Celestial Kingdom is rich in spiritual energy in every corner, so it is the perfect place for cultivation. Princess Ye continued icily. Jing Er went along with the princess and said, "If you are not happy to have your memory erased, you are welcome to leave the Celestial Kingdom and proceed to the Devil or the Monster Kingdom. These places are full of dangers, with a minimal supply of spiritual power. With your level of cultivation, you cannot possibly survive. You will be torn apart by the monsters before you even start to improve yourself." The master and her servants' words managed to catch their attention. All of them stood gazing at one another. They dared not fight back, even though they were not willing to become servants. Gu Shijie was currently unconcerned about anything else. She waited patiently for an answer from Long Sai. At the same time, she started to treat his wound with all the supplies that she had. She treated his injury quickly with the best quality of medicine. Shortly after, the bleeding stopped. Jing Er was infuriated. She took a huge step forward and demanded, "We do not require your medical attention for our own servant." She wanted to take Long Sai back, but was forced to retreat by a flash of seven-colored ray. Gu Shijie was angry. "You." Long Sai looked at her fixedly. Unlike his usual quiet self, he responded, "Do we know each other?" Gu Shijie was delighted. "Do you recognize me now?" Long Sai dismissed her hope. "I do not recall anything. However, the way you address me as Instructor Long sounds very special to me, like we have known each other for a while." Gu Shijie was a little disappointed, but she had to reassure him. "We do know each other. In fact, we were best friends on Earth. I did not know about the pain that you have to suffer here." Long Sai heaved a sigh of relief and gave her a reassuring smile. "I trust you. I no longer wish to be a hostler. I will go with you." Princess Ya's expression changed abruptly while Jing Er's eyes flashed with anger as she demanded, "Long Sai, the princess residence is richly endowed with spiritual power. Once you leave, it is impossible to come back. Forget about being a hostler. You cannot even become a cleaner." Long Sai responded casually, "I don't care." His sentence muted Jing Er. She was stunned for a moment, before she retorted, "The Princess Palace is not a place where you could enter and leave at your discretion. When your highness recruited me into your palace, I was told to make myself at home, and what is it now? How quick was it for the promise to be broken?" Long Sai's pretty face became solemn. Jing Er was speechless. Princess Ye also lost her breath for a moment. She said coldly, "Do you think I would cherish you as much? You are only a shameful man. You can go as you wish. I will not stop you. However, if you cannot even be accommodated in the Princess Palace, where else can you go?" Her gaze then fell on Minglang. "Minglang, include his name on the list of the forgotten, and mention that he has been disposed of by Princess Palace. Whoever employs him later on would be up against the Princess Palace." Her words were enough to obstruct him in all his pathways in heaven. It was not an ordinary statement, but one putting him on a precipice. Long Sai was, nevertheless, unshaken by it, and instead said with composure, "I will not work in any palace anymore. I will follow her." He stood by Gu Shijie. Gu Zijie's heart shivered. She never thought that, despite losing his memories, Long Sai had so much faith in her. Princess Ye felt as if she was slapped across the face. Her pretty face reddened. "She? Who is she?" "She is only the Lord from Earth who has yet to disappear. What will following her bring you? Do you want to descend again?" "Why would that be an issue?" Long Sai shut her up with a sentence. Princess Ye clenched her fist slightly. She never thought that such a man could be so curt. When she first met him, he had a rather solemn countenance. Everyone else would always horse around with glee, except for him. His face would be full of sorrow and confusion, as if he never wanted to come to heaven, and was kicked all the way up here. Since he came to heaven, he had been somewhat unresponsive to others' remarks. He tends not to be able to express himself precisely, and as a result, he was branded a socially awkward person. Seeing that he had satisfactory external abilities and a pretty face, Princess Ye called him over to be her horseman. Throughout his few days in the palace, he was very silent, as if unable to speak. When he was bullied, he would not protest, and because of that he was easily manipulated by Jing Er. In fact, he was not dumb. He just did not want to respond. Long Sai was handsome. Even in heaven, he was a qualified competitor. At the moment, the confusion on his face disappeared. Now he emerged as a beautiful jade, with the dust on himself cleaned. He stood there, with a distinguished aura of his own. Princess Ye became remorseful all of a sudden, feeling a sense of reluctance. She looked at Gu Shijio and Long Sai and smirked. Are you sure you believe in her completely? This person has been secretive since coming to heaven, and reluctant to show her face. You never know, she may turn out to be your enemy. Long Sai said with confidence, I trust her. He had in fact known Gu Shijio throughout 2 of his lifetimes. Even if he failed to recognize her, he trusted her instinctively, subconsciously knowing that what she said was true. Look at the robe she is wearing. She is not even willing to show her body shape. A person who dresses up like this is most likely too ugly to be seen. How far will you go following a person like this? Or are you thinking of being the face for her? Jing Er spoke rashly. She was not being treated well by Gu Shijio just now. Hence, she seized the opportunity to attack her with her words. Before Gu Shijio could say anything, a voice came from afar. Princess Ye, your maidservant needed a slap on her face. The crowd looked up upon hearing the voice, and saw a person on horseback flying over from afar. Gu Zijia's heart pounded in her chest. The horse was as white as snow, and even its saddle was white. As its wings flapped, the clouds were stirred. It carried an auspicious light around it. The person was in a golden hat and a purple robe. The purple robe was stunning, like a floating purple cloud. The person came with haste, and in a few glimpses, arrived at the field. The person jumped down swiftly from the horse and stood right in front of Gu Shijio. The firmament stone gasped by Gu Zijia's ears. What a handsome man! Master! Master! That person was, in fact, extremely handsome. All his features were outstanding, which made him the sweetest eye candy, and within his elegance was a trace of royalty. As Gu Shijio caught sight of the purple robe, her heart jumped. She was stunned. Her gaze was fixed on the person's face for at least 2 seconds. The people around her kneeled again, and from their greetings, Gu Shijio knew that the person standing before her was the youngest son of the Emperor Immortal, also known as Yun Yanli. Emperor Immortal had 2 sons. The eldest had married and was the prince everyone was talking about, and the youngest son was Yun Yanli, who was unmarried and uninterested in power. He had successfully trained himself into a fairy of golden standard. The firmament stone told all of the above to Gu Shijio. Gu Shijio fell into stunned silence for a moment. When she regained her consciousness, she asked the firmament stone, "How do you know such things in heaven?" Firmament stone did not know how to answer. It did not dare to tell her that it was the mysterious voice which told it about it. However, it had to answer something in order to prevent suspicion from Gu Shijio. I am, after all, the omniscient firmament stone. Gu Shijio examined Yun Yanli for a while, then asked Firmament Stone, "Has he been to Earth?" Firmament Stone struggled to respond. This, it's a top secret. According to the mysterious voice, Yun Yanli should be the one who would be sent off to the Tianqing land 200 years later, and one which would be in a relationship with Gu Shijio. The Firmament Stone never thought Gu Shijio would meet him so soon. Could it be fate? Firmament Stone examined its master in detail. However, Gu Shijio was still in her mask, and Firmament Stone could not discern her expression. However, It was unusual for her to ask such a question. Could it be that she was somewhat attracted to Yun Yanli? Numerous assumptions flashed across Firmament Stone's heart. It was still concerned about whether Di Fui had arrived at heaven since disappearing. When the mysterious voice transmitted it some information just now, it took the chance to ask the voice about the matter. However, that mysterious voice did not even nudge when being asked the question. It only said, "Don't tell me you are still thinking of fulfilling the marriage between your master and Huang Tu? I would advise you to give up. They are not meant to be together. Their fate in that lifetime was forced upon by Huang Tu, and that disobeyed God's plan, causing him to have to pay back heavily. That was why he had to disappear 10 years earlier. So you had better give up." Firmament Stone was hurt. "I was just trying to ask if he is here in heaven." The mysterious voice ignored it. As Yun Yanli arrived, he helped Princess Ye with her affairs. Princess Ye was obviously obliging to him. Hence she ordered another maidservant over and slapped Jing Er by more than 10 times. That Jing Er had already been hit so hard by Gu Shijio that her face swelled. Now it was even worse. Hence, she hid embarrassedly in a corner, afraid to utter a single word. After Princess Ye settled the matter with the maidservant, she held on to Yun Yanli's arm in an attempt to please him. "Brother, are you satisfied with how little you dealt with the matter?" Yun Yanli used his finger to tap her forehead. "You as a princess should behave like a princess. That does not mean that you punish your servants to your heart's content. They are ascenders who thrive with their own effort. Each and every one of them could achieve something and emulate us. You better not behave so capriciously." All right, I know. I will be more aware next time. However, brother, this person stole my servant. Brother, please do something on my behalf." Princess Ye held out her slim finger and pointed at Gu Shijio. Yun Yanli's gaze finally fell on Gu Shijio. Gu Shijio was standing there, with a rather solemn aura, not moving or making a sound. Yun Yanli gave off a soft sigh. "Little Ye, I had witnessed everything with my own eyes just now. It was, in fact, your mistake for mistreating Sir Long. And this Miss Gu is his friend. It is natural for her to stand up for him upon seeing all this unfolding." Although Princess Ye was still not satisfied, she did not dare to argue anymore. She only pouted her little lips and put on an unpleasant face. Yun Yanli stopped heeding her, and allowed his gaze to stay on Gu Shijio. "Miss Gu, it was little Ya's mistake just now. I would like to apologize for her mistake." He held his hand up as a matter of courtesy. Since he had initiated an apology, she withheld her dissatisfaction. Besides that, she had a liking for the prince. Hence she nodded and replied nonchalantly, "You don't have to do so, Your Highness. I did not suffer from any loss." Yun Yanli spoke courteously again, and praised her for being able to reach heaven without being elevated. Then he digressed and said, "Although it was little Ya's mistake earlier, I suppose Miss Gu is unaware of one thing. Since Sir Long had already ascended to this land, he will not be able to return to his initial land. It is not that we don't want to release him. It is that his body condition will only be suited for this land, and once he leaves this land, he will be met with trouble." Gu Shijio was, in fact, thinking of bringing Long Sai back since he was the overlord of the Tianwen clan. A man respected by all. He would be of more use there than staying as a servant here. However, perhaps she could not bring him back. She verified the truthfulness of the matter with the Firmament Stone. The Firmament Stone had received an order from the mysterious voice long ago. Hence, he stealthily confirmed the matter with Gu Shijio. Gu Shijio furrowed her brows slightly. Since Long Sai had annoyed that princess earlier, he most likely would not do well in the remnants of his life in heaven. She looked at Yun Yanli and asked, "And what does Your Highness mean by that?" Yun Yanli responded, "If Sir Long is all right with it, I would like to put him to servitude under my name and appoint him as a captain. A guard is equivalent to an officer around the 8th and 9th level in the army, and a prince's bodyguard could be named a captain. Long Sai could be promoted from being a servant to a captain. That was quite a huge promotion." The offer proved Yun Yanli's sincerity. "Master, just agree. Just agree. This Yun Yanli treats the people under his command extraordinarily well. His soldiers are close to him. Being by his side, Long Sai will not suffer any loss. The firmament stone hurriedly helped Gu Shijio to make up her mind. Gu Shijio, in fact, did not want Long Sai to be under anyone's command, but she could not protect him forever. Since she could not stay long on this land, if she still refused Yun Yanli's offer, Long Sai would fail to find a shelter later on. Gu Shijio closed her eyes and contemplated for a moment, then turned towards Long Sai and asked, "Instructor Long, do you wish to serve the prince?" Long Sai mused, and before long he said, "I will listen to what you say." In other words, he agreed. Yun Yanli smiled. Miss Gu has a refreshing candor. He looked at the people around and said with a friendly but forceful tone, "Everyone, you are the talents of the earth. Hence in the Saha world, I will not mistreat you. In the Saha world, we appreciate talents, and if all of you put in the effort, you will not have to worry about succeeding in the future." His pep talk was encouraging, suppressing the negative mood caused by Princess Ya moments ago. Everyone, in fact, could no longer go back to where they once were, and would not go to the devil either. Hence, thinking it through, they realized that all they could do was to stay and wait for orders. Yun Yanli roamed about before the others as if checking on the qualification of the people standing before him that day. As he was done, he heaved a sigh of relief and claimed, "Today each of you here has vast potential. If all of you do not mind, once erasing your memories, you could fall under the command of myself in the army. As for what position you will receive, it depends on your hard work and your capabilities. The army is the place where one could be trained to their greatest potential, and where the chances of getting a promotion were the highest. Those who qualified for the army were all impressive, and since everyone who got there had been extraordinary, they were confident enough to accept the offer instantly. The prince so easily resolved a crisis. It seemed that he was a man with a grasp of politics. Gu Shijio did not think of staying for too long. She was not there to meddle with matters in heaven. Hence, once she got Long Sai's matter settled, she turned and was ready to leave. Yun Yanli called her from behind. "Miss Gu, please stay." Gu Shijio turned around and asked, "Is there anything we need to discuss?" Yun Yanli said gently, "You are the first person in 10,000 years to come to heaven without ascending. I admire what you have done, but since it is your first time here, you are most likely unfamiliar with the rules here. In the Saha world, to prevent the invasion of spies from the gates of the devil, it is a rule that everyone reveals their true nature. Since it was my first time seeing such a lady like you, I did not tell you about this rule just now. I am just wondering if you could take off your mask and reveal your true identity." He was extremely polite in his request. Gu Shijio stood there for a moment to ponder. Everyone else was, in fact, curious about Gu Zijia's true identity. In a moment, she was surrounded by people. Princess Ya's eyebrows twitched. She had already been annoyed by Yun Yanli's stark courtesy when speaking to Gu Shijio, only that she had been keeping her discontent to herself. Now that he had made the request, and Gu Shijio looked hesitant, she bit her red lips slightly and judged under her breath that Gu Shijio had a face too ugly to be seen. She had the malicious thought to embarrass Gu Shijio. Hence, she said laughingly, "Brother, I guess this Miss Gu has her reasons for not taking off her mask. After all, in the Saha world, everyone has a distinguished beauty. Taking the mask off will only make her too inferior to roam about in this world." Among the crowd, many felt the same, and they gradually nodded. Yun Yanli frowned and said, "Little Ya, what nonsense. External beauty is only a shell. All of us are people with powers, so why does it matter if we have a beautiful shell? I only requested her to take off her mask because it is the rules here. I have no other intentions. I believe that no matter how she looks like, no one will judge her for that." Although he had been speaking up for Gu Shijio in his heart, he also thought that the reason for her wearing a mask must be due to her rather unpleasant-looking face. Long Sai suddenly spoke. "She is not ugly at all. She is very beautiful." Princess Ya smirked and kept her silence. Her smirk was equivocal. Gu Shijio hesitated just now because she had been speaking to the firmament stone, asking it if there was actually such a rule in the Saha world. Once getting the confirmation that she needed, she was going to take off her mask. She did not come to the place to throw troubles upon herself, and since she was all on her own, and they always said one should always blend into others' culture while staying with them, she did not intend to set herself up against the others. And in fact, her face was not at all unpresentable. She spoke nonchalantly. Putting on a mask is only a habit. There is nothing unpresentable underneath. She raised her hand and took off the mask from her face, revealing herself. A sudden silence filled the air. She was extremely beautiful. She had distinguished facial features, thick eyebrows, eyes like stars, and lips that were rather pale, but of a beautiful shape. With a head of black hair and her black robe, her perfect complexion was accentuated. She had a cold aura, appearing like a flowing cloud high up in the sky, and making others eager but afraid to approach. She had a striking beauty, and all the men present were stunned. Naturally, they held their breath. Yin Yanli's eyes lit up, and he was startled. Princess Ya's pretty face turned pale at the same time. Her beauty was considered outstanding even in the Celestial Kingdom. It was unparalleled. Princess Ya was definitely embarrassed. Princess Ya's two maidservants had retreated to the sides due to the awkwardness, so everyone's gaze went between Gu Shizhou and Princess Ya. Subconsciously they were making comparisons. The result was embarrassing for Princess Ya. Everyone fancied things being pretty, especially men. No matter what honorable position one was in, instinctively, one would adore beautiful women. Hence, all their gazes fell onto Gu Zijia's face. Although no one in the crowd said anything, Princess Ya was angered by what she saw. This Miss Gu actually has a beautiful appearance, but that body figure. Princess Ya had a curvy body figure that was extremely appealing. Gu Shijia was reluctant to heed her since she was not there to compare herself to her. Hence, she raised her hand and put the mask back on her face, and said with nonchalance, "Now I guess everything is all right? I bid my farewell." She turned and left. The crowd was reluctant for her to leave. They had not had enough. Princess Ya lost her esteem. She was resentful but did not dare to show it before Yin Yanli. Instead, she held on to Yin Yanli's hand. "I just brewed beauty wine. Brother, would you like to taste it with me?" "There is no need, little Ya. I have other matters in mind. You can have fun by yourself. I will taste your wine when I am free later." Yin Yanli pulled his hand away, turned, and left. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.